Hello friends. Welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. How are you all? So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 unlocked the all-alien of you. Ultimate Omnitrix and fall in love with Kai Green, Charmcaster and Julie Yamamoto. Also be sure to subscribe and like this video. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. Convergence. The Scarlet Mesa stood sentinel against the cobalt sky, its weathered face catching the last golden rays of the setting sun. 19-year-old Ben Tennyson crouched at its base, tracing calloused fingertips across the UNU. Sewell petroglyphs etched into the sandstone. The symbols, concentric circles interconnected by spiraling lines, bore an uncanny resemblance to the configuration displayed on his Omnitrix moments before it had started behaving differently. "Come on, don't do this to me now," Ben muttered, tapping the device with practiced precision. 3 days ago, while battling a rogue Tekadon in downtown Bellwood, the Omnitrix had emitted a pulse of emerald energy unlike anything Ben had experienced before. Since then, the transformation selection interface had changed, displaying alien forms he'd never accessed, some he didn't even recognize. More concerningly, the device occasionally activated without his input, as if responding to some external signal. Grandfather Max remained unreachable on a classified plumber mission, and even Azimuth hadn't answered Ben's increasingly frustrated communications. Which was why Ben now found himself in the New Mexico desert, following energy readings that matched the Omnitrix's unusual signature. The device gave a sudden, high-pitched whine. Green light pulsed beneath its surface, casting eerie shadows across the ancient rock art. "That's new," Ben whispered, watching as the Omnitrix's hourglass symbol began rotating counterclockwise. The familiar green glow intensified, becoming almost blinding. Without warning, the transformation sequence initiated, but instead of the usual flash of light, emerald energy crackled across Ben's skin like lightning, his DNA reconfiguring in slow motion. The pain was exquisite, a burning sensation that traveled from his core to his extremities as his very molecules rearranged themselves. "What's happening?" he gasped, dropping to his knees. His vision swam, overlapping images of 100 different perspectives flooding his consciousness. He could see through compound eyes, sense electromagnetic fields, perceive ultraviolet spectra, sensory information from dozens of alien forms bombarding him simultaneously. Then, as suddenly as it began, the cascade of sensations coalesced into something cohesive. Ben felt his body settle into a form he recognized, Diamond Head, but with crucial differences. The Krista, L-line structure of his body seemed more refined, the facets sharper, the underlying matrix more complex. And most strikingly, he could sense the full roster of his transformations hovering at the edge of his consciousness, accessible in ways they'd never been before. "This is incredible," Ben said, his voice resonating through his crystalline form with newfound clarity. He extended a hand, watching as the structure of his arm reconfigured without the need for a full transformation. The crystalline composition remained, but the density and arrangement shifted, forming what he instinctively recognized as an adaptation from XLR-8's physiology, speed-optimized joints within a Petrosapian frame. A crack of displaced air behind him triggered combat instincts honed through years of interstellar conflict. Ben pivoted, raising a crystalline arm that morphed into a shield configuration borrowed from Cannonbolt's defensive properties. "Still playing with that watch, Tennyson?" A voice like dark honey, equal parts amusement and wariness, cut through the desert silence. Standing atop the mesa, silhouetted against the crimson sky like some ancient deity, was Kai Green. The breeze caught her raven hair, now styled in an undercut that framed sharp cheekbones and knowing eyes. Gone was the teenage girl who'd dismissed him years ago, in her place stood a woman whose confidence matched his own. Dressed in practical expedition gear adorned with subtle Navajo patterns. "Kai." Ben shifted back to human form with unprecedented smoothness, the transition feeling more like exhaling than the typical flash of transformation. "What are you doing here?" Her expression remained carefully neutral, but Ben caught the flicker of surprise in her eyes, both at his sudden appearance and the effortless transformation. "I could ask you the same thing." Kai descended the rocky slope with practiced ease, dust clouding around her sturdy boots. "This is Navajo Nation land, and these petroglyphs are under protection for archaeological study." She paused, eyes narrowing. "My archaeological study, specifically." The last rays of sunlight caught the silver pendant at her throat, a stylized wolf that Ben recognized as Yinaldlushi. The skinwalker symbol that had once fascinated her as a child. Nearby, a research camp was partially visible, advanced scanning equipment juxtaposed against tradition. Al Navajo patterns decorating the tent fabric. I was tracking an energy signature, Ben explained, showing her the Omnitrix, which continued to pulse with unusual brightness. Something's happening with the watch. It started 3 days ago, and the readings led me here. Kai's professional detachment faltered, scholarly interest overtaking old tensions. 3 days ago, that's when these Petrog lifts started emitting low-level radiation. She reached for a tablet secured at her hip, swiping through data displays. Nothing dangerous, but the energy signature doesn't match any known terrestrial source. I've been mapping similar sites across the Southwest, all showing the same activation pattern. Their eyes met, mutual recognition sparking between them. This was no coincidence. You've changed, Ben observed, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. So have you. Kai's gaze was appraising, noting the lean muscle that had replaced teenage awkwardness, the watchful confidence in his stance. No more desperate attempts to impress me with alien transformations. I save those for people who appreciate them, Ben replied with a half-smile that carried no bitterness, just the easy confidence of someone who'd grown comfortable in his own skin. Something shifted in Kai's expression. Respect, perhaps, or curiosity about the man who'd replaced the boy she remembered. Before she could respond, both their attentions snapped toward a disturbance at the edge of the research camp. 3 figures in modernized armor emerged from behind scientific equipment, their helmets bearing the unmistakable emblem of the Forever Knights. The medieval-inspired design had been updated with sleek technological enhancements, including shoulder-mounted energy weapons that hummed with power. Ben Tennyson, announced the Central Knight, voice distorted through the helmet's filter. Your presence was anticipated. The artifact you seek is already in our possession. Ben stepped forward, positive, awning himself between Kai and the Knights. Funny, I don't remember making an appointment with you guys. Didn't I put you out of business years ago? The Forever Knights adapt, Tennyson. While you've been the universe's celebrated hero, we've been studying your precious Omnitrix. The Knight raised a gauntleted hand, revealing a device emitting pulses of crimson energy. Specifically, its weaknesses. Ben felt the Omnitrix shudder against his wrist, the comfortable hum of its energy faltering. Kai, get back to your camp. Call Plumber headquarters. I don't need protection, Tennyson, Kai replied, unslinging what appeared to be an ordinary backpack but unfolded into an advanced containment unit of unmistakably alien design. I've been handling extraterrestrial artifacts, and those who covet them, since before you went to college. The lead knight chuckled. Dr. Green's expertise is precisely why we're here. Her research has been most illuminating. He gestured toward the petroglyphs. These are not mere cave drawings, but a map, star charts created by visitors who came long before the Omnitrix. Before even Azimuth conceived of its creation. Ben felt the familiar pre-battle clarity sharpening his senses. If you're after the watch, you're wasting your time. Better nights than you have tried. We don't want your watch, Tennyson. We want what it's becoming. The knight activated something on his gauntlet, and the crimson energy intensified. The convergence has begun. The original makers are returning. The Omnitrix emitted a painful pulse, forcing Ben to his knees. As green energy flickered erratically around the device, through gritted teeth, he reached for the familiar core, slapping it down with practiced determination. Big, chill, he gasped, as the Tran-S formation took hold, but something was different. The Necrophrygian form emerged with unprecedented detail. Patterns like frost crystals adorned his wings, and the core temperature of his body dropped lower than ever before. Cold enough that the very air crystallized around him. And beneath the physical form, Ben could sense something new, a deeper connection to the Necrophrygian consciousness, ACC. To instincts and abilities previously locked away. With a primal screech that echoed across the mesa, Ben exhaled a blast of cold unlike anything he'd produced before. The temperature plummeted to near absolute zero. The air itself condensing into shimmering crystals that engulfed the nearest knight in a prison of perfect ice. The 2 remaining knights activated energy shields that glowed the same crimson light as their gauntlets. The Omnitrix's evolution is further along than our readings suggested, one commented, adjusting settings on his armor. Deploy the phase disruptors. From their backpacks emerged hovering spheres that surrounded Ben, emitting a frequency that caused his necrophrygian form to flicker like a bad transmission. Pain lanced through his molecular structure, disrupting the cohesion between his physical form and consciousness. Ben, Kai shouted, activating her containment unit. A pulse of blue energy erupted from the device, temporarily neutralizing the phase disruptors. These aren't ordinary knights. That's plumber tech they're using. Modified, but I recognize the energy signature. Ben fought through the disruption, forcing his form to remain stable. Since when do you know plumber tech signatures? Since I started finding things in these ruins that your grandfather's organization would prefer stayed buried, Kai replied, revealing unexpected depth to her archaeological career. She manipulated controls on her containment unit, causing it to emit a resonance that reinforced the Omnitrix's signal. Whatever's happening to your watch, SA Knights know more about it than you do. The lead knight raised both arms, revealing integrated weapons. The convergence cannot be stopped. Drive. Green. Your grandfather understood this. Why do you resist? Leave my family out of this. Kai snapped, genuine anger breaking through her professional composure. Ben seized the momentary distraction, concentrating on the new awareness within his transformed state. If the Omnitrix was evolving, allowing deeper access to his alien forms, perhaps. Let's try something new, he whispered, focusing on the molecular structure of his necrophrygian form. Instead of switching transformations, he willed the current form to evolve, drawing on what felt like an untapped reservoir of potential within the alien DNA. The Omnitrix symbol on his chest expanded, green energy spiraling outward as his form grew larger, the ice patterns on his wings becoming more intricate, more deliberate, alien writing rather than random crystalline formations. His consciousness expanded, touching something ancient and vast. Ultimate Big Chill, Ben announced, his voice resonating with harmonics that made the knight's armor vibrate uncomfortably. With a single beat of his transformed wings, he generated a temporal cold front, freezing not just matter but the very time flow around the knights, slowing their movements to a glacial crawl. Kai stared, scientific, curiosity momentarily overwhelming her tactical focus. That's not standard necrophrygian ability. That's evolution, Ben finished, the word carrying weight beyond its syllables. The Omnitrix isn't just glitching. It's advancing, accessing potential that was always there. He turned to the lead knight, whose movements occurred at a fraction of normal speed. Now, let's discuss this convergence you're so excited about. With precise application of his newfound temporal freezing ability, Ben extracted the knight from the time distortion field, leaving him capable of speech while his companions remained nearly motionless. The original makers created the foundation of what you call the Omnitrix, the knight said, surprisingly willing to share information. Azimuth merely rediscovered principles established eons ago, when the first sentient species explored DNA manipulation. And these petroglyphs are what? Their signature. Ben gestured toward the ancient markings. Navigation markers, Kai interjected. Professional excitement breaking through. I've been tracking similar symbols across sacred sites globally. They all activated simultaneously 3 days ago. She approached cautiously, studying Ben's evolved form with undisguised fascination. The patterns on your wings match the outer ring of symbols. Ben glanced at his wings, seeing the similarity for the first time. The crystalline patterns weren't random, they mirrored the ancient alien writing perfectly. The convergence approaches, the knight continued, when all worlds that share the Omnitrix's DNA library align. The original makers seeded countless planets with genetic potential, creating the very diversity your watch now catalogs. They return during convergences to harvest their investment. Harvest. Ben's voice cooled several degrees, frost forming with each syllable. Evolution requires guidance, Tennyson. The strong survive because the weak are culled. The knight's tone held zealous conviction. The Forever Knights have always protected Earth from alien contamination. Now we serve the ultimate purification, helping the original makers separate worthy genetic lines from failures. Kai had moved to her equipment, scanning both the petroglyphs and Ben's transformed state. He's partially right about one thing, she said, examining readings. These symbols do correlate with astronomical alignments. There's a convergence coming, 7 planetary systems perfectly aligned for the first time in 20,000 years. Systems containing species in the Omnitrix, Ben realized, pieces clicking into place. All original Maker seeding sites, the Knight confirmed. Including Earth. Ben's enhanced consciousness processed implications rapidly. So these original Makers are returning to, what? Eliminate species they deem evolutionary failures. And the Forever Knights are helping them. Only the worthy survive, the Knight replied. Your Omnitrix evolution is proof, Enrico. GNEZESH the approaching convergence and prepares its wielder. The question is whether you'll stand with the natural order or against it. Ben released his ultimate form, shifting back to human with that same unsettling smoothness. The Omnitrix gleamed on his wrist, its green light steadier now but undeniably different, more luminous, the hourglass pattern occasionally shifting like living circuitry. I've never been big on natural order, when it means letting people get hurt, Ben said, eyes hardening. Especially when self-appointed judges decide who's worthy of survival. The Knight's helmet tilted, studying Ben with what might have been disappointment. The boy who saved the universe, unable to see the larger picture. The original Makers created the very species you transform into, Tennyson. Their return is cosmic law. Yeah, well, I've broken cosmic laws before. Ben glanced at Kai, who nodded slightly, a silent communication passing between them that would have been impossible years ago. Regulations about universe-ending events are more like guidelines anyway. In one fluid motion, Ben reactivated the Omnitrix, transforming into Swampfire, but like Big Chill before, this version appeared evolved, taller. The plant matter more complex and vibrant, flames burning hotter where they emerged from his palms. Without the need for verbal announcement, Ben instantly accessed the ultimate form. His body reconfiguring into a towering botanical entity whose very presence accelerated plant growth across the desert floor. Ultimate Swampfire, he announced, more for tradition than necessity. With precise control, he extended roots deep into the earth, connecting with the desert ecosystem in ways his standard transformation never could. The mesas trembled as ancient seeds, dormant for millennia, awakened at his command. The time freeze affecting the other Knights dissipated, but before they could regroup, massive flowering vines erupted from beneath the sand, entangling their armor and neutralizing their weapons with remarkably targeted precision. Ben, Kai called, voice tight with urgency, whatever you're doing is activating more petroglyphs. She pointed to her tablet, where similar sites across the region showed sudden energy spikes. It's like they're responding to your transformation. The lead Knight laughed despite his precarious position, entangled in living restraints. The convergence cannot be stopped. The original Makers designed the Omnitrix's foundation. Every transformation brings their return closer. Even now, you serve them, Tennyson. B.N. reverted to human form with uncharacteristic abruptness, concern etching his features. The Omnitrix pulsed in time with the glowing petroglyphs, a visual confirmation of the Knight's claims. We need to secure these Knights and get this data to Plumber headquarters, Ben said, eyeing the Omnitrix warily. And I need to figure out what's happening with the watch before I use it again. Kai approached, her expression softened by shared purpose rather than their complicated history. My grandfather had records about these sites, journals he wouldn't let anyone see. If what these Knights are saying has any truth. She hesitated, professional detachment warring with personal concern. Ben, I think we're dealing with something beyond even Azimuth's understanding. The Omnitrix gave another pulse, projecting a holographic display unlike anything Ben had seen before. Star systems appeared, rotating in complex patterns, with countdown timers indicating the approaching alignment. 3 weeks until complete convergence. Ben read, studying the projection. That's consistent with my astronomical calculations, Kai confirmed, comparing the hologram to her own data. Whatever's coming, we have 21 days to prepare. Ben met her gaze, 19 years of heroism weighing in his expression. Then we have 21 days to stop it. As desert twilight deepened to indigo, Ben and Kai secured the Forever Knights with specialized containment tech from her research equipment. The lead Knight remained unnervingly compliant, as if their intervention meant nothing against the cosmic machinery already in motion. You've grown impressive, Drive. Green, Ben commented, watching Kai efficiently program containment parameters. Last time we met, you were more interested in the werewolf F transformation than the technology behind it. Kai's hands paused over the controls, a complicated smile playing at her lips. And you were more interested in impressing me than understanding YT. He transformation fascinated me in the first place. She finished the sequence, straightening to meet his gaze directly. We were kids, shallow in different ways. And now? Ben asked, genuine curiosity replacing old wounds. Now I understand that the transformations were never just about the physical forms. They were about potential, seeing beyond human limitations. Her eyes flickered to the restrained knights. These fanatics aren't entirely wrong about one thing. Your watch connects to something fundamental about life in this universe. I've been tracking the evidence through archaeological records for years. The admission surprised him. You've been researching the Omnitrix. Not directly. I've been researching what these knights call the original makers, though in Navajo traditions, they're known by different names. Kai gestured toward the night sky, where stars now glimmered against infinite darkness. Stories of star visitors who shaped life exist in virtually every indigenous culture. Most archaeologists dismiss them as creation myths. I found evidence suggesting otherwise. Ben studied her with newfound appreciation. The teenage crush that once clouded his perception had dissolved, replaced by respect for the dedicated scientist she'd become. So your grandfather knew about all this. That's why the knights mentioned him. Shadows crossed Kai's expression. Grandfather protected certain sites, kept them off official records. He believed some knowledge wasn't meant for those who would misuse it. She glanced at the knights. I thought he was being overprotective. Now I'm not so sure. The lead knight spoke from his containment field, voice carrying despite its low volume. Wes Green understood the balance. Drive. Green. Ask yourself why the plumbers allow him to hide these sites instead of studying them. Some truths transcend your human concepts of good and evil. Enough cryptic warnings, Ben interrupted, patience waning. If these original makers are returning to harvest species they deem failures, they're going to have a problem with me. They accounted for you, Tennyson, the knight replied. The Omnitrix itself is their creation, Asmat. Merely reconstructed their work without understanding its purpose. Why do you think it attached to you? Why has it evolved with you? You were their instrument. The night air seemed to cool further. Stars brightening as if responding to the conversation below. The Omnitrix pulsed once, projecting another holographic display, this one showing Ben's DNA structure intertwined with alien markers that shouldn't have been possible for a human to carry. What is this? Ben demanded, staring at his own genetic code. Kai moved closer, scientific curiosity overtaking caution. That's not standard human DNA. Those markers. She looked from the display to Ben, realization dawning. The original makers didn't just create the Omnitrix's foundation. They modified human genetics, specific human lineages, to be compatible with it. Precisely, the knight confirmed. The Tennyson bloodline was prepared generations ago, ensuring the perfect host would exist when needed. You were never random, Ben Tennyson. You were designed. The revelation landed like physical weight on Ben's shoulders. Throughout his hero career, he believed finding the Omnitrix had been cosmic coincidence, extraordinary Luke. That he'd sometimes handled well and sometimes poorly. The suggestion that his very existence had been engineered for this purpose challenged everything about his identity. Even if that's true, Ben said finally, it doesn't change anything. I decide how to use this power, not some ancient aliens with questionable ethics. He deactivated the holographic display with a firm tap on the Omnitrix. And right now, I'm deciding we need more information before these original makers arrive for their harvest. Kai placed a hand on his shoulder, the first personal contact between them since their reunion. My research camp has secure communications. We should contact Max, get these knights transferred to plumber custody. Ben nodded, grateful for her pragmatic focus. As they walked toward the camp, the petroglyph patterns continued glowing softly, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the Omnitrix. You know, Kai said after a moment of companionable silence, when I was younger, I was attracted to the wolf transformation because it represented something wild but noble. Something that understood natural balances. She glanced sideways at him. I didn't have the maturity to see those same qualities existed in the person controlling the transformations. The admission hung in the desert air between them, not quite an apology, not exactly flirtation, but an honest acknowledgement of changed perspectives. People grow, Ben replied simply. Sometimes it takes aliens threatening planetary harvesting to bring them together again. Kai's unexpected laugh broke the tension, warm and genuine. Always the hero, even with your existential crises. It's part of my charm. Ben's smile carried newfound complexity, the weight of revelation balanced against the comfortable rhythm of banter with someone who suddenly understood him better than most. At the research camp, Kai activated a communications array far more sophisticated than standard archaeological equipment. Ben recognized Ed Plummer technology intermixed with custom modifications. Grandfather wasn't the only green working with the plumbers, Kai explained, noting his expression. After what happened with the Yenildushi years ago, I started asking questions. Eventually, those questions led to specialized training. You're a plumber. Ben couldn't hide his surprise. Consultant, Kai clarified, entering authentication codes. Specialized in xenoarchaeology and historical interventions. I document evidence of past alien visits, assess their cultural impact, determine if further action is needed. She completed the sequence, establishing a secure channel. Your grandfather recruited me 3 years ago. Before Ben could process this revelation, the communications screen activated, revealing not Max Tennyson but Magister Patellidae. His piscine features tense with uncharacteristic concern. Tennyson. Green. Thank Galileo you've made contact. Patellidae adjusted his glasses, glancing off-screen at WH. It appeared to be emergency protocols in progress. We've got situations developing globally. Energy signatures activating at archaeological sites, unexplained stellar phenomena, and approximately 30 minutes ago. Every plumber of Anodite heritage collapsed simultaneously. Gwen, Ben said immediately, concern for his cousin overriding all else. Stable but unconscious, Patellidae confirmed. Along with every other being with connections to the Anodite energy field. Something's interfering with mana across the entire sector. Kai exchanged a significant look with Ben. The convergence is accelerating. If it's affecting Anodites, we're dealing with something that can manipulate fundamental energy fields. We've captured Forever Knights at our location, Ben reported, gesturing toward the contained prisoners. They've been expecting this, called it a convergence, involving the original creators of the Omnitrix's technology. They're claiming these beings are returning to evaluate evolutionary progress across multiple planets. Patellidai's expression grew graver. That correlates with reports we're receiving. Max is coordinating with Galvan Prime now. Azimuth has gone into seclusion. Working on something he claims might counteract the convergence effects. The Omnitrix is changing, Ben added, raising his wrist to show the subtly altered device. Accessing deeper transformation capabilities, connecting to alien forms in ways it never has before, and apparently responding to ancient alien technology hidden at archaeological sites worldwide. Which matches activity we're seeing at similar locations globally, Patellidae confirmed. Dr. Green, your research has suddenly become our highest priority. Transmit everything you've documented about these sites immediately. Kai nodded, fingers flying across her equipment. Transmitting now. But there's more. The Forever Knights suggested my grandfather knew about these sites, deliberately kept some off official records. Patellidai's hesitation was barely perceptible but unmistakable to Ben's experienced eye. West Green protected certain knowledge, yes. Max honored his judgment. The Magister adjusted his glasses again, a nervous tell. We'll dispatch a team to transport the prisoners and secure the site. In the meantime, you two should. The transmission abruptly dissolved into static, the communications AR. Ray emitting a high-pitched whine before shutting down entirely. That's not good, Ben muttered, as Kai attempted to restore the connection. Something's jamming all frequencies, she confirmed after several failed attempts. Not just plumber channels. Everything from standard radio to quantum entanglement communications. The night around them had grown unnaturally still, the desert sounds silenced as if the very air had frozen. Above, the stars seemed to pulse in unison, their light intensifying then dimming in perfect rhythm with the Omnitrix and the glowing petroglyphs. We need to move, Ben decided. Instincts honed through years of combat screaming warnings. Whatever's happening, staying near an active site is probably. The ground beneath them trembled, sand shifting as ancient. Machinery awakened deep below the mesa. The petroglyphs began rotating, stone grinding against stone as symbols realigned themselves into new configurations. It's responding to the stellar alignment, Kai realized, checking her tablet. The convergence isn't just coming, it's already beginning. From the containment field, the lead knight watched with undisguised satisfaction. The purification approaches. The worthy will transcend. The unworthy will serve their purpose as genetic material. His gaze fixed on Ben. The Omnitrix knows its true function now, Tennyson. You cannot resist your design. As if responding to his words, the Omnitrix pulsed painfully against Ben's wrist, green energy crackling across his skin. Unbidden, transformation energy engulfed him, cycling rapidly through alien forms, Heatblast, Diamondhead, Ghostfreak, XLR8, each manifestation lasting only seconds before shifting to another. Ben. Kai moved toward him, only to be forced back by the intensity of the energy discharge. Fight it. Whatever's controlling the watch, you're stronger. Through gritted teeth, Ben struggled to assert control, forcing the transformations to slow. With tremendous effort, he stabilized his forearms, dropping to his knees as the Tetraman form solidified. Something's trying to access the Omnitrix, he managed, all four hands gripping the ground for stability. Using me as a conduit. The mesa's trembling intensified, sand cascading down its face as a previously hidden entrance revealed itself, an archway formed from the same material as the petroglyphs but untouched by weather or time. From within, green light pulsed in perfect synchronization with the Omnitrix. We have to get away from here, Kai urged, helping Ben to his feet despite his transformed state. If the convergence is using the watch to communicate, distance might weaken the connection. Ben nodded, struggling to maintain focus through the barrage of alien consciousnesses attempting to surface. With Kai's support, he staggered away from the mesa, each step requiring concentrated effort against the pull drawing him toward the revealed entrance. The Forever Knight's containment field flickered as they retreated, the lead knight's voice following them. Running changes nothing, Tennyson. The original makers created the very concept of transformation. They exist in all forms simultaneously. Distance is meaningless to them. Quote, as they reached Kai's research vehicle, a modified all-terrain truck with plumber-grade shielding, the night sky above them rippled like disturbed water. Stars shifted position, constellations rearranging themselves into patterns matching the petroglyphs. The Omnitrix responded with increased activity, the transformation energy surging painfully through Ben's Tetraman form. Get us out of here, Ben growled, collapsing into the passenger seat as his form flickered between alien species. Kai activated the vehicle, advanced engines humming to life as she engaged maximum thrust. The truck rocketed across the desert floor, kicking up plumes of sand in its wake. Through the rear view screen, they watched as the mesa seemed to fold inward, stone recon. Figuring like liquid as the structure transformed into something distinctly non-terrestrial. It's some kind of beacon, Kai observed, dividing her attention between driving and monitoring readings on the vehicle's sensors. Broadcasting a signal on frequencies of never seen before, penetrating subspace, possibly other dimensions. Ben managed to stabilize his transformation again, settling int. Brainstorm's form. The cerebrocrustacean's enhanced intelligence momentarily helping him process the overwhelming influx of information from the Omnitrix. Fascinating and deeply concerning, he articulated in Brainstorm's precise diction. The Omnitrix appears to be functioning as both receiver and transmitter for a pan-dimensional signal originating from what colloquial vernacular might term, outside conventional spacetime. He tapped his enlarged cranium with a pincer. My current form's cognitive capacity suggests the convergence represents less a physical alignment of planets and more a temporal intersection of evolutionary timelines. Kai glanced sideways at him, eyebrows raised despite the crisis. Did you just use Brainstorm to actually understand what's happening instead of just sounding smart? Indeed, drive, green, personal growth manifests in myriad ways. The cerebrocrustacean expression shifted into something approximating a smile. Also, your driving technique displays remarkable precision given the challenging terrain and circumstances. A flicker of amusement crossed Kai's face before professional focus reasserted itself. So these original makers exist outside normal time. That would explain the simultaneous activation of sites worldwide. They're not communicating across space but across temporal planes. Precisely. And the Omnitrix, Ben's explanation T short as pain lanced through his transformed state. With a flash of green light, he reverted to human form, gasping as the connection temporarily stabilized. The Omnitrix was designed to bridge those planes. Transform not just bodies but reality itself. The desert landscape blurred around them as Kai pushed the vehicle to its limits, heading toward the nearest plumber outpost in Albuquerque. The night sky continued its impossible rearrangement, stars forming and reforming into patterns that hurt the human eye to observe. "We need to warn everyone," Ben said, checking his personal communicator only to find all networks down. "If this is happening globally." "It is," Kai confirmed grimly, indicating a monitoring system built into the vehicle's dashboard. "I'm receiving automated emergency broadcasts on quantum backup channels. Reports of geological disturbances at archaeological sites worldwide, astronomical anomalies visible to the naked eye, and widespread technological disruption." She swallowed hard. "Ben, this is bigger than anything we've faced before." The weight of responsibility settled across Ben's shoulders, familiar yet always heavy. "Then we adapt. We've stopped world-ending threats before." "Not like this," Kai replied softly. "This isn't invasion or destruction. If what those knights said is true, we're facing the architects of evolution itself, beings that designed the very species in your watch, possibly designed humanity itself." The implication hung between them as the truck raced through the desert night, stars continuing their impossible dance overhead. Ben studied the Omnitrix, its familiar green glow now carrying ominous significance. "All my life, I thought finding this watch was accident, luck, good or bad depending on the day." His voice remained steady despite the existential weight of his words. "Finding out I was engineered to be compatible with it, that my entire bloodline might have been designed for this purpose." He looked up, meeting Kai's concerned gaze. "It doesn't change who I am or how I'll use this power." Kai's expression softened with unexpected understanding. "You know, my people have stories about being shaped by divine beings, instructions for living written into our very existence. Some find that deterministic, removing free will. Others find strength in it, purpose and connection to something greater." Our hands remained steady on the controls as she navigated a particularly rough section of terrain. "The question isn't whether you were designed for the Omnitrix, Ben. It's what you choose to do with that design." The simple wisdom in her words resonated, offering perspective Ben hadn't expected from someone he'd once dismissed as superficial. Before he could respond, the Omnitrix pulsed again, but instead of triggering another uncontrolled transformation, it projected a holographic star map of unprecedented detail. "That's not the Milky Way," Kai observed, glancing at the projection while maintaining their course. "It's not any galaxy in our database," Ben confirmed, recognizing star configurations from his extensive cosmic travels. "And those markers," he indicated points where green light pulsed at regular intervals. 7 systems, just like the knight said. All evolutionary seeding sites." The holographic display expanded, showing planetary orbits accelerating through time, racing toward perfect alignment. As they watched, one of the green markers flickered and turned red. "What does that mean?" Kai asked, tension edging her voice. The answer came not from Ben but from the Omnitrix itself, which spoke in a voice unlike its usual mechanical tone, deeper, resonating with harmonics that seemed to bypass the ear and vibrate directly in the mind. "Evolutionary assessment initiated. Species designation. Petrosapian. Homeworld. Petropia. Status. Resurrected following extinction event. Assessment criteria. Adaptation, resilience, advancement potential." Ben and Kai exchanged alarmed glances. "It's starting," Ben whispered. "They're evaluating the Petrosapians first." The hologram shifted, showing Petropia in extraordinary detail, a crystalline world whose inhabitants went about their lives unaware they were being observed, judged on criteria established eons ago by beings they might have considered gods. Subject species demonstrates exceptional resilience. TURAL reconstruction following extinction event indicates adaptability. Genetic stability maintained despite catastrophic interruption. The Omnitrix's voice paused, as if considering. Assessment. Worthy of continuation. The red marker returned to green, pulsing steadily once more. Relief flooded Ben's expression, followed immediately by horror at the implication that the outcome could have been different. "They're really doing it," he said, voice barely audible over the vehicle's engines. "Deciding which species live or die based on their standards of evolutionary success." Kai's knuckles widened on the steering controls. "And Earth is one of those 7 systems." The hologram confirmed her statement, zooming in on the familiar blue-green planet, their home, now marked for evaluation by entities whose concept of worthiness remained terrifyingly unknown. "We need to contact Azimuth," Ben decided, the path forward crystallizing with urgent clarity. If anyone understands the Omnitrix's true origins, it's him. And if these original makers created the foundation he built upon, he needs to know they're returning to judge his work, and the species he's helped protect. Kai nodded, adjusting their course slightly. "The plumber base in Albuquerque has long-range communication equipment that might penetrate the interference. We can reach Galvan Prime from there, assuming the base itself hasn't been compromised." As they crested a rise, the distant lights of Albuquerque appeared on the horizon, but something was wrong. Instead of the expected city glow, green energy danced above the urban sprawl, pulsing in patterns identical to those at the Mesa site. "That's not just the plumber base," Ben observed grimly. "The entire city is experiencing some kind of convergence effect." Kai slowed the vehicle, consulting her tablet. "There's no documented archaeological site in Albuquerque with these characteristics." Her expression darkened with realization. Unless what? "Unless my grandfather kept it off the records," Kai finished, professional detachment warring with personal conflict. "If he believed certain knowledge was dangerous enough to conceal, he might have hidden evidence of the most important sites completely." The implications of her statement settled between them as they approached the outskirts of the city. The Omnitrix continued projecting its holographic display of the 7 systems, the markers pulsing with increasing frequency as the convergence progressed. "Whatever happens," Ben said, decision solidifying within him, "I'm not letting some cosmic architects decide who lives and who dies based on their criteria of worthiness. If the Omnitrix was created to facilitate their judgment, then I'll use it to challenge their authority instead." Kai glanced at him, seeing not the boy who once tried too hard to impress her, but a man whose determination had been forged through countless battles and impossible choices. "You know that means potentially opposing beings with the power to create and destroy entire species." "Wouldn't be the first time," Ben replied with the grim confidence of someone who had faced cosmic entities before and prevailed. "The difference is, now I understand what the Omnitrix truly is, what I am in relation to it." He looked down at the device, its green glow reflecting in his determined eyes. "If I was designed as their instrument, I'm about to become the worst design flaw in universal history." As they drove toward the green-lit city and whatever revelations awaited within, the night sky completed its impossible transformation. Stars now formed perfect representations of the 7 systems marked for judgment, visible to every observer on Earth, a celestial announcement that the original Mach-Ers had returned to evaluate their greatest experiment. The convergence had begun, and with it, a battle for evolutionary autonomy that would test not just Ben's transformed powers but the very concept of free will against cosmic design. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Arcane Shadows. Rain fell in silver sheets over Arkham's gothic skyline, each droplet carrying whispers of power that ordinary humans couldn't hear. Hope Chamberlain stood atop the university's astronomy tower, white hair plastered against her face as she traced luminescent sigils in the air with practiced precision. The storm wasn't natural. Nothing had been natural since the convergence began. "Revelis obscura," she murmured, completing the final glyph. Violet light pulsed through the rain, revealing patterns invisible to Mund and perception. Ley lines that should have flowed steadily beneath the city now fractured and bleeding magical energy into the atmosphere. Hope, once known only as Charmcaster, had abandoned that name years ago. Along with her hunger for domination, the magical prodigy who once sought power at any cost now worked to restore balance to a world increasingly thrown into magical chaos. Tonight marked the third consecutive evening of anomalous energy surges across Arkham's ancient grid of power nodes, each pulse growing stronger, more erratic. A familiar pink stone in her satchel vibrated against her hip. "I know, I see it too," she told her familiar, running fingers over the smooth surface of the stone creature. The sentient construct, once one of many she'd treated as disposable tools, had become her most trusted companion in her redemptive work. Through the mystical overlay, Hope traced the corruption's path to its source, the university library's restricted wing, where texts on theoretical dimensional physics shared space with grimoires containing knowledge best left forgotten. The convergence between science and sorcery had always been strongest here, one reason she'd chosen Arkham as her base of operations after leaving Legerdemain. Her modified staff, sleeker than the gaudy instrument of her youth, carved from silverwood and inscribed with restoration runes, extended with a thought. She vaulted from the tower, magical energies cushioning her descent to the rain-slicked courtyard below. Students hurried past, oblivious to the woman walking through sheets of rain without getting wet. Their mundane concerns a poignant reminder of what she fought to protect. Hope's communicator, a blend of technology and enchantment, chimed softly. Only 3 people had this contact method. One was her uncle Hex, now teaching theoretical magical ethics at Friedkin University. The second was Gwen Tennyson, once bitter rival, now reluctant ally in matters transcending their past animosity. The third was Benjamin Tennyson. She hesitated before answering, memories cascading like the rain around her. Their history remained complicated. Adversaries turned occasional allies turned something undefined when they'd last parted 2 years ago after jointly containing a dimensional breach in Legerdemain. The person who contacted her now wasn't the obnoxious child who'd once dismissed her as just another villain. Nor was she the power-hungry sorceress who'd seen him only as an obstacle. Hope speaking, she answered, voice steady despite the memories. We have a problem. Ben's voice carried none of his characteristic humor. Only focused urgency. Something's happening with the Omnitrix, connected to sites around the world, including one near you. Magical signatures off the charts, according to plumber readings. Hope glanced toward the library, where violet light now pulsed visibly even to normal perception. I'm already on it. Arkham's ley line network is destabilizing. Started 3 nights ago, getting worse by the hour. She paused, professional detachment warring with curiosity. What's happening with the Omnitrix? It's evolving, accessing deeper transformation abilities, connecting to something ancient. The background noise suggested he was in motion, a vehicle of some kind. And apparently responding to technologies left by its original creators. They're called the original makers. And they're returning to judge which species deserve to continue existing. The clinical precision of his explanation contrasted sharply with the weight of its implications. Hope processed the information rapidly, connections forming between her recent discoveries and his revelation. The magical disruptions follow the same timeline, she confirmed, moving purposefully toward the library. 3 nights ago, every mystical practitioner I'm in contact with reported simultaneous disturbances in their working energies. The barriers between dimensions are thinning, particularly around sites with historical significance. That tracks with what we've found. Ben's voice lowered slightly. I'm headed your way. Should reach Arkham by morning with Dr. Kai Green. She's a xenoarchaeologist tracking these sites. The patterns suggest the convergence affects not just alien DNA but magical foundations too. Hope's step faltered momentarily at the mention of Kai Green, a name she recognized from Ben's past. Though they'd never met, the reaction surprised her. She had no claim on Ben Tennyson, nor any reason for the sudden knot in her stomach. I'll have findings ready when you arrive, she replied. Professionalism overcoming the unexpected emotion. But Ben, be careful with transformations. If what you're saying is true, using the Omnitrix might accelerate whatever's happening. Already figured that out, he confirmed grimly. See you soon, Hope. The connection ended as Hope reached the library's ornate entrance. Even without magical sight, the wrongness was evident. Windows glowing with unnatural light, doors vibrating slightly against their hinges as pressure built from within. Professor Emmanuel Haraway, the university's foremost expert on theoretica, L-dimensional physics and Hope's reluctant research partner, waited inside, his typically immaculate appearance disheveled from hours of emergency work. Salt and pepper hair stood at odd angles, wire imid glasses askew on his aristocratic features. Ms. Chamberlain, thank the stars. Relief flooded his expression. The containment fields are failing. Whatever's trying to come through is unlike anything in our records. Hope brushed past him toward the restricted wing, magical senses extending to assess the situation. It's not coming through, Professor. It's already here, has been for millennia. The barriers are simply making it visible now. The restricted wing had transformed since Hope had consulted its texts yesterday. Reality itself seemed fluid, bookshelves bending at impossible angles. Ancient tomes hovering open as their contents, written in languages dead for centuries, glowed with renewed purpose. At the room's center, a perfect sphere of darkness rotated slowly, consuming light rather than reflecting it. Dimensional anchor point, Hope identified, staff at ready position. A fixed location where multiple realities intersect naturally. Usually dormant, but something's activated it. She approached cautiously, reading the magical energies with experienced precision. This isn't random. The anchor's responding to a signal. What kind of signal could activate a dimensional nexus point? Haraway asked, maintaining a prudent distance. Hope traced a revealing sigil that hovered briefly before being absorbed into the sphere. The darkness rippled, momentarily dispel, eyeing patterns identical to those Ben had described, concentric circles interconnected by spiraling lines. One that's being broadcast across multiple dimensions simultaneously, she answered, recognition dawning. Professor, what do you know about the concept of evolutionary architects? Beings that might have designed life across multiple worlds. Haraway adjusted his glasses, academic interest temporarily overriding fear. There's a theoretical model in xenobiology, the panspermia intelligence hypothesis. It suggests a precursor species might have seeded compatible life forms across galaxies, creating a sort of universal evolutionary experiment. He gestured toward his own research materials, scattered across a nearby table. Recent papers have explored whether such beings might exist n-dimensional states beyond conventional spacetime, allowing them to monitor multiple evolutionary timelines simultaneously. That's not just a hypothesis anymore. Hope's voice hardened as pieces aligned in her mind. They're returning to evaluate their experiment, and they're using anchor points like this to re-establish connection to our reality. The sphere pulsed, expanding slightly before contracting again. Books flew from shelves, pages turning rapidly as if searched by invisible hands. Ancient languages reconfigured into new texts, instructions or preparations of some kind. We need to contain this until Ben arrives, Hope decided, removing components from her satchel. Professor, I need the Livingston prism from the secure vault. Haraway paled. That artifact is highly unstable. So is the multidimensional anchor point about to tear open in your library, Hope countered with a pointed look. As Haraway hurried away, Hope began establishing a modified containment circle. Not to imprison the phenomenon but to stabilize it, prevent catastrophic expansion while allowing for controlled study. Her familiar stone creature emerged from her satchel without prompting, Positi, awning itself at key points around the circle to strengthen the magical geometry. Hope worked with methodical precision, so different from the flashy, chaotic spellcasting of her youth. Years of study under reluctant mentors, including brief periods learning from Gwen Tennyson and even Hex after his reformation, had refined her considerable raw talent into disciplined expertise. The power-hungry girl was gone. The woman who replaced her understood that true mastery came from restoration rather than domination. The sphere's rotation accelerated as she completed the circle, reality bending more severely around it. Books continued their strange animation, pages flipping to reveal diagrams of DNA structures, star charts, and magical formulae that seemed to bridge the gap between science and sorcery. The convergence isn't just coming, Hope murmured to her familiar as understanding crystallized. It's already happened before, multiple times throughout history. These aren't new patterns, they're ancient ones reactivating. Haraway returned with a crystalline prism that refracted light into impossible spectra, colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. The Livingston prism, as requested. Though I maintain this is extraordinarily dangerous. More dangerous than what's already happening. Hope took the artifact, positioning it carefully within her containment circle. This anchor point is connected to others globally. Whatever's coming through isn't isolated to Arkham. The prism began to rotate in sync with the dark sphere, refracting energy rather than light. Through its facets, Hope glimpsed other locations experiencing similar phenomena. A desert mesa where petroglyphs glowed with green energy, a subterranean chamber beneath Rome where ancient mechanisms activated after millennia of dormancy. A temple complex in Cambodia where stone guardians animated to reconfigure astronomical markers. It's coordinated, Hope realized aloud. Technological, magical, and astronomical systems all responding to the same signal. She focused her attention on the desert location, recognizing a figure near the glowing petroglyphs. Ben. The image clarified briefly. Ben 10. Nyson examining the glowing symbols while the Omnitrix pulsed in synchronization. Beside him stood a woman Hope assumed must be Drive. Green, her equipment scanning the phenomenon. The scene had the quality of past events rather than current ones, perhaps from the previous night. Temporal distortion, Haraway noted, scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming caution. The anchor point isn't just bridging dimensions. It's connecting across time as well. Which means whatever's coming isn't restricted by normal chronology, Hope concluded, adjusting her containment parameters to account for this new variable. They could arrive from any point in their timeline to any point in ours. The sphere pulsed again, more violently this time, straining against Hope's containment circle. The magical barriers held, but feedback rippled through Hope's connection to the spell, sending her staggering backward. Haraway caught her arm, steadying her with surprising strength for an academic. Perhaps we should evacuate, he suggested, glancing nervously at the increasingly unstable phenomenon. Hope shook her head, straightening. No, this is one of many activation points. Running from this one just means being unprepared for the next. She reinforced the containment circle with additional sigils, drawing more deeply on her personal reserves. Besides, I need to understand what we're facing before Ben arrives. Tennyson is coming here. Haraway's expression registered surprise followed by thoughtful calculation. The bearer of the Omnitrix, yes, that makes sense given the patterns we're observing. He hesitated, studying Hope with new interest. You and he have history. It wasn't a question, and Hope didn't treat it as one. We've been on opposite sides. Sometimes the same side. It's complicated. Most worthwhile things are. Haraway returned his attention to the phenomenon, but not before Hope caught a knowing glimmer in his eyes that made her question how much the professor Esser had deduced about her personal feelings. The containment circle stabilized, allowing Hope to approach the sphere more closely. With careful gestures, she manipulated the Livingston prism to filter the dimensional energies, separating information from raw power. Images formed in the refracted light, beings of impossible configuration observing evolutionary processes across multiple worlds simultaneously. The original makers, she whispered, finally glimpsing what Ben had described. The entities existed in a state beyond conventional form, simultaneously crystalline and fluid, technological and organic, individual and collective. Their consciousness operated on principles that made even Hope's extensive magical training seem primitive by comparison. Through the prism's facets, she watched as these beings seeded worlds with carefully designed genetic potential, established dimensional anchor points to monitor development, and created the foundation of what would eventually become the Omnitrix, a tool designed not just for transformation but for evaluation. They're coming to judge, she realized, the full weight of the situation settling like cold stone in her stomach. Not just individual species but entire evolutionary branches. Magical development, technological advancement, cultural complexity, all measured against standards established at creation. The sphere pulsed once more, this time with enough force to crack the marble floor beneath it. Hope's containment circle held, but the strain was evident in the sweat beading on her forehead, the trembling in her extended hands. We need to strengthen these barriers immediately, she instructed Haraway. Gather every artifact from the vault with dimensional stabilization properties. I don't care about universit. Why protocols or research restrictions, this takes priority. As Haraway hurried away, Hope's familiar stone creature made a sound of warning. She turned to find the restricted wing's entrance shimmering as reality thinned. Through the distortion stepped three figures in armor bearing the unmistakable emblem of the Forever Knights, though their traditional medieval aesthetic had been updated with SL.E. technological enhancements and mystical components Hope recognized as genuine magical artifacts. Miss Chamberlain, the lead knight greeted, his helmet retracting to reveal a man in his 40s. With the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. Or do you still prefer Charmcaster? Titles become so complicated when one changes allegiances. Hope's staff leveled at the intruders, violet energy crackling along its length. The Forever Knights embracing magic now. Times really have changed. We embrace knowledge that serves our purpose, the knight replied smoothly. The convergence dem. Anne's adaptation from all who wish to survive the coming evaluation. He gestured toward the contained sphere. You've done impressive work stabilizing the anchor point. Our calculations suggested it old have breached containment hours ago without intervention. I didn't do it for your approval. Hope maintained her defensive stance, magic ready at her fingertips. What do you want? The same as you, understanding. The knight approached until he stood at the edge of the containment circle, studying the phenomenon with evident fascination. The original makers return to evaluate their creation. We seek to ensure humanity passes their test. Hope's eyes narrowed, suspicion crystallizing. By whose standards? And at what cost? By the only standards that matter, evolutionary viability. The knight's expression hardened. As for cost, harsh truths require acceptance. Not all branches of humanity will be deemed worthy of continuation. The genetically superior will ascend, others will serve the greater purpose through their genetic material. The clinical detachment with which he discussed human culling sent ice through Hope's veins. Eugenics wrapped in cosmic judgment. Still same Forever Knights after all, just with better public relations. This isn't ideology, it's cosmic reality. The knight gestured toward the sphere, where images of the original makers continued to refract through the prism. They created the foundation of life across 7 systems. Their return was always inevitable, the final examination after eons of development. And you're helping them, why? Ensuring humanity's destruction doesn't seem on brand for terrestrial defenders. A thin smile crossed the knight's features. Not destruction, transcendence. The original makers don't simply eliminate, they harvest and refine. The worthy genetic lines ascend to join their grand design. He studied Hope with calculating assessment. Your magical aptitude marks you as evolutionarily significant, Miss Chamberlain. Perhaps more than you realize. Flattery from fascists. I'm overwhelmed. Hope reinforced her containment circle as the sphere pulsed again, never taking her eyes off the knights. Let me guess. You've decided which human genetic lines are worthy, based on your own biases, and you're here to ensure the evaluation follows your preferences. We merely serve the natural order, the knight replied. The original makers established the parameters millennia ago. We've spent generations tracking bloodlines with the greatest evolutionary potential. His gaze shifted to the library entrance. Including the Tennyson line, which produces such interesting expressions of genetic compatibility with extraterrestrial DNA. Hope's pulse quickened. Ben isn't your specimen to study. On the contrary, he's the culmination of carefully guided genetic development spanning 20 generations. The knight's casual revelation landed with calculated precision. Why do you think the Omnitrix bonded so perfectly with him? Random chance. The universe isn't that careless with its most powerful tools. Before Hope could process this information, the sphere emitted a pulse unlike previous fluctuations, focused, directed. Energy streaked toward the lead knight, who accepted it without surprise or resistance. His eyes glowed momentarily with the same green light that characterized the Omnitrix. The communication begins, he announced, voice overlaid with harmonics that hadn't been present moments before. The original makers acknowledge our service. He extended a hand toward Hope, expression serene with zealous conviction. Join us, Hope Chamberlain. Your magical lineage marks you as evolutionarily significant. Stand with the worthy as the convergence completes. Hope's response came not in words but in action. With a precise gesture, she reconfigured her containment circle, not to strengthen it but to redirect its energy. The sphere's next pulse rebounded, striking the lead knight with magical feedback that disrupted whatever connection had begun to form. The knight staggered, eyes clearing as the foreign presence retreated. Unfortunate choice, he said coldly, nodding to his companions. Secure her in the anchor point. The Tennyson boy will arrive soon. Preparations must be completed before then. The knights advanced, weapons combining technology and enchanted components powering to life. Hope didn't wait for their attack, initiating the confrontation on her terms. With a word of power, she activated protective wards placed throughout the library. Months of preparation for exactly this kind of incursion. Bookshelves animated, ancient tomes becoming projectiles that targeted the knights with unerring precision. Simultaneously, Hope drove her staff into the marble floor, sending cracks radiating outward that disrupted the knight's formation. Her familiar stone creatures multiplied, no longer just one companion but a dozen, each targeting a specific weakness in the knight's armor. "You've improved considerably," the lead knight commented, deflecting animated books with an energy shield. "Records of your previous encounters with 10. Nyson suggested powerful but undisciplined spellcasting. This is refined. People change." Hope maintained her focus, simultaneously managing the attack and reinforcing the containment around the dimensional anchor. "Sometimes they even grow up." The knights responded with coordinated efficiency that confirmed Hope's suspicion. These weren't ordinary Forever Knights but an elite faction with specific preparation for magical combat. Energy weapons discharged not random blasts but precisely calibrated disruption fields that unraveled her animated guardians. Counter spells emerged from their armor, neutralizing her magical projectiles with disturbing precision. "We've studied you extensively," the lead knight confirmed, advancing methodically despite the magical chaos around him. "Your transformation from chaos magic practitioner to dimensional restoration specialist is well documented. Your connection to the Tennyson boy, particularly fascinating. The personal nature of their legends sparked anger Hope channeled into her next attack. Violet lightning cascaded from her staff, targeting the junction points in the knight's armor where technology and magic merged. Two knights staggered as their systems overloaded, but the leader continued his approach unaffected. "Your power has purpose in the coming order," he continued, deflecting her attacks with increasing ease. "The original makers value magical potential as much as technological advancement. Your bloodline carries specific markers they seeded in human genetics millennia ago." Hope backed toward the sphere, mind racing through tactical options. The knights had clearly prepared specifically for her magical style, which meant changing the parameters of the engagement. With a swift gesture, she summoned the Lee Vingston prism from its position in the containment circle. "You want to talk bloodlines and destiny." She held the prism at eye level, its facets refracting her magical energy into spectra invisible to normal sight. "Let me show you mine." Quote, within the crystal, Hope accessed something she rarely touched, the pure, unfiltered power that ran through her family line, connected directly to legerdemain itself. The prism amplified and focused this energy, not as chaotic destruction but as precise interdimensional manipulation. Reality rippled around the knights as Hope temporarily shifted them partially out of phase with the current dimension, not enough to banish them but sufficient to disrupt their attack. Their movements slowed, weapons firing at reduced efficiency as they struggled against the dimensional interference. "This won't hold them long," Hope told her familiar, which had returned to her side during the battle. "We need to secure the anchor point before." The dimensional sphere pulsed violently, the disruption to the containment circle from the prism's removal causing immediate instability. Dark energy lashed outward in tendrils that sought connection with anything magical in proximity, including Hope herself. Pain lanced through her as one tendril made contact, foreign consciousness invading her magical awareness. Images flooded her mind, countless worlds, evolutionary pathways, species rising and falling across millennia, all observed by the same vast, ancient intelligence. Through this momentary connection, Hope glimpsed the true nature of the convergence, not simply judgment but reclamation. The original makers returning to harvest genetic and magical potential they considered rightfully theirs, seeded across worlds as an investment now mature enough for collection. With tremendous effort, she severed the connection, falling to her knees as magical backlash coursed through her system. The knights were beginning to phase back into full dimensional alignment, weapons recalibrating to compensate for her tactics. "The anchor point is destabilizing," the lead knight observed clinically. "Without your containment, it will expand exponentially within hours." Precisely as scheduled, Hope struggled to her feet, staff braced against the floor for support. "You want it to destabilize. To create a gateway large enough for physical manifestation. The original makers exist beyond physical form," the knight corrected. "But their instruments require materialization to properly evaluate evolutionary development." He gestured toward the sphere, where he images had clarified to show mechanical constructs of impossible complexity. The harvesters will emerge at each anchor point globally, collecting genetic and magical samples for evaluation. The cold precision of his explanation chilled Hope more than any threat. These weren't villains reveling in destruction but zealots fulfilling what they genuinely believed to be cosmic purpose. Their absolute certainty made them far more dangerous than power-hungry adversaries. Before she could formulate a response, the library doors burst open. Professor Haraway returned, arms laden with artifacts, and behind him, two figures Hope recognized instantly despite never having met one of them. Ben Tennyson had changed since she'd last seen him 2 years ago. The lankiness of adolescence had given way to the defined physique of someone whose body was a frequently used tool. His expression carried the focused intensity she remembered, but tempered with maturity that made him almost a stranger. The Omnitrix at his wrist pulsed with energy unlike anything she'd seen from the device before, deeper, more fundamental to reality itself. Beside him stood Drive, Kai Green, whose composed professional demeanor belied the alertness in her posture. Hope recognized the stance of someone with combat training, noting how the archaeologist's eyes immediately assessed threats, exits, and tactical positions within the space. Hope, Ben called, the Omnitrix activating with a flash of green light. Get down. Hope dropped without hesitation as Ben transformed, not with the familiar flash but with an evolutionary cascade that seemed to rewrite reality around him. The alien that emerged wasn't one Hope recognized from their previous encounters, humanoid but composed of living energy, crystalline structure. Res floating in formation around a core that pulsed with the same frequency as the dimensional anchor. Atomics, Ben announced, voice resonating with harmonics similar to those the knight had exhibited during his brief connection to the original makers. But different. The transformation's appearance confirmed what Hope had begun to suspect. The Omnitrix wasn't just accessing alien DNA but evolving it, pushing forms toward states the original makers had designed but never implemented. The Forever Knights reacted with practiced coordination, weapons reconfiguring to target Ben specifically. The Tennyson specimen has arrived, the lead knight announced, something like reverence entering his tone. The convergence accelerates. Hope seized the opportunity created by their divided attention, gesturing to Professor Haraway. The containment artifacts. Now, Haraway scattered the collected items in a precise pattern around the dimensional sphere. Hope channeled energy through her staff, activating each artifact in sequence to re-establish containment stronger than before. The sphere's violent pulsing slowed, tendrils of dark energy retracting as new barriers formed. Meanwhile, Ben engaged the knights directly. Atomics' evolved form generating energy unlike anything Hope had witnessed from his previous transformations. Each movement left traces of quantum possibilities in the air, reality rippling as probability fields collapsed in his wake. The original makers recognized their instrument, the lead knight called, weapons ineffective against Ben's evolved form. You cannot resist your purpose, Tennyson. The Omnitrix responds to their call because it was designed to do so. Ben's response came not in words but in focused action. Atomic energy coalesced between his hands, compressing until it formed a perfect sphere of light that mirrored the dark dimensional anchor in opposite form. Nuclear fusion controlled at the quantum level, Haraway whispered, academic fascination momentarily overriding fear. He's manipulating fundamental forces with conscious precision. Hope completed her containment sequence as Ben released his energy construct. Instead of an explosion, the sphere expanded to envelop the knights in a containment field of its own, one that neutralized both their technology and magical components simultaneously. That's new, Ben commented, meaning his transformed hands with surprise that suggested the ability had emerged instinctively rather than through conscious control. The Omnitrix is suggesting capabilities. It's evolving in response to the convergence, Hope confirmed, approaching cautiously. The magical resonance emanating from his transformed state interacted with her own energies in unexpected ways, creating harmonic patterns in the air between them. Ben, these knights aren't just trying to stop us, they're facilitating the original maker's return. They believe it's evolutionary destiny. Kai Green stepped forward, attention divided between the contained knights, the dimensional anchor, and the unusual interaction between Ben's transformation and Hope's magic. We've encountered similar rhetoric at other sites. They're convinced the convergence represents transcendence rather than extinction. Her voice carried the precise diction of someone accustomed to academic presentation, but with an underlying steel that spoke of field experience. Dr. Chamberlain, I presume, your containment work is remarkable. Hope, please. She managed a nod of acknowledgement while maintaining focus on the reinforced barriers. And thank you. Interdimensional stabilization has been my specialization since she'd nearly destroyed reality pursuing power. Since she'd realized destruction was infinitely easier than restoration. Since she'd chosen the harder path of redemption. Since I decided to fix problems instead of causing them, she finished simply. Something like understanding passed between the TWO women. Recognition of journeys toward purpose rather than power. The moment ended as Ben's transformation fluctuated, energy patterns destabilizing briefly before resolidifying. The Omnitrix is responding to the anchor point, he said. Voice still carrying those unsettling harmonics. I can feel it trying to communicate. Connect. It's hard to describe. The dimensional sphere pulsed in perf. ECT synchronization with the Omnitrix symbol on Ben's chest. Through the Livingston prism, now reintegrated into Hope's containment system, images formed with greater clarity than before, the original makers observing Ben specifically. Their impossible consciousness focusing on his transformed state with evident interest. They recognize you, Hope realized aloud. Not just the Omnitrix, you personally. The culmination of guided genetic development, the lead knight interjected from within his containment field, satisfaction evident despite his captivity. The Tennyson bloodline was Dezine. D for compatibility with their instruments. Each generation brought closer to the ideal expression. Ben's transformed features were difficult to read, but the disruption in his energy pattern suggested the revelation disturbed him deeply. You're saying my entire family line was, what? Engineered by these beings. Not engineered, cultivated, the knight corrected. Subtle interventions across generations, guiding genetic expression toward optimal compatibility with transformative technologies. The Omnitrix found you because you were made to be found, Tennyson. Hope watched understanding dawn in Ben's expression. The same existential question she'd faced upon learning her own magical aptitude wasn't random talent but inherited connection to legerdemain. The weight of predestination versus free will, design versus choice. It doesn't matter why the Omnitrix chose you, she said quietly, momentarily setting aside the tactical situation to address the person beneath the transformation. What matters is what you've chosen to do with it. Something shifted in Ben's energy configuration, stabilizing, focusing. She's right, he said, addressing the knight directly. Even if your evolutionary architects designed my genetics, they didn't design my choices. His attention turned to the dimensional anchor. And I choose to stop whatever harvesting process they're planning. The sphere pulsed again, this time projecting images beyond the original makers themselves, showing 7 worlds, including Earth, surrounded by mechanical constructs that reminded Hope of processing facilities. Not destruction but collection, evaluation, refinement, and disposal of whatever failed to meet predetermined criteria. We need to understand the full scope of what we're facing, Kai said. Professional focus unwavering despite the existential implications. Dr. Chamberlain. Hope, is there a way to extract information from the anchor point without accelerating its expansion? Hope Consi. Read the question with the measured assessment of an expert rather than the impulsive reaction of her younger self. The Livingston prism allows glimpses across dimensional barriers. With proper calibration, she adjusted the artifact's position within the containment circle. Ben, can you maintain that form while reducing your energy output by approximately 30%? The harmonic resonance, CE between your transformation and the anchor point is creating feedback. Ben nodded, the swirling energy of his form condensing slightly. Like this. Perfect. Hope recalibrated her containment parameters, creating a controlled interface between the prism and the dimensional sphere. Professor Haraway, the spectral analysis equipment. The professor hurried to connect scientific instrument S to Hope's magical constructs, an integration of approaches that would have been impossible for the Charmcaster of years past to consider, much less implement. Together, they established a monitoring system that allowed extraction of information without destabilizing the anchor point further. Images crystallized through the prism with unprecedented clarity, the 7 worlds marked for evaluation. The original maker's perspective across multiple timelines simultaneously, and most crucially, the specific criteria they had established for evolutionary success. Genetic adaptability, technological development, magical potential, cultural complexity. Kai read from the data stream, professional detachment maintaining despite the personal implications. They're evaluating entire species against benchmarks established at seeding, and collecting specimens that meet their standards while discarding those that don't, Hope added grimly, interpreting magical signatures in the data. Not destroying worlds, harvesting them for what they consider valuable evolutionary material. The lead knight laughed softly from his containment. Now you begin to understand. Not destruction but transcendence. The worthy ascending to join the greater design while contributing to universal evolution. With worthy, defined by beings who haven't interacted with these species for millennia, Ben countered. The energy of his transformed state pulsing with evident emotion despite its alien configuration. Playing gods based on criteria they established before these civilizations even existed. The dimensional sphere responded to the emotional resonance in his transformed state, projecting new images. The original maker's previous harvesting cycles on worlds now extinct, species evaluated in A. They're ascended or rendered down to base genetic material for repurposing. This has happened before, Kai observed, the archaeologist's trained eye recognizing patterns in the extinct civilizations. Multiple times across galactic history, civilizations reach a certain development threshold, then simply disappear from the record. Because they were harvested, Hope confirmed, reading magical signatures with growing alarm. The convergence has occurred at regular intervals throughout cosmic history, approximately every 20,000 years. Ben's transformed state fluctuated, energy patterns reflecting internal conflict, and the Omnitrix is part of their system. A tool designed to facilitate evaluation by cataloging and accessing evolutionary potential. His voice carried the weight of betrayal. Azimuth didn't create it. He reconstructed something that already existed in conceptual form. Which explains why it bonded so perfectly with your genetics, the knight added. The 10 Wyson bloodline was prepared specifically for compatibility with their instruments. Hope watched realization settle across Ben's features, visible even through his transformed state. The hero who had saved the universe multiple times now confronted the possibility that his greatest power had never truly been his own. Before anyone could respond, the dimensional sphere pulsed with unprecedented intensity. The containment field held, but the projection through the Livingston prism expanded, showing current events across all 7 worlds marked for convergence. On each planet, anchor points like the one in Arkham activated simultaneously, dimensional barriers thinning as the original maker's presence strengthened. It's accelerating, Hope warned, reinforcing her containment spells. Whatever's coming through, it's happening now. Quote, Ben reverted to human form with that same unsettling smoothness Hope had noticed in the projected images from the desert. The Omnitrix pulsed on his wrist, ITS green light synchronized perfectly with the dimensional sphere. We need a plan, he said, the focused clarity of a veteran hero replacing existential doubt. If these anchor points are opening globally, we can't contain them all. Perhaps we shouldn't try. Professor Haraway spoke for the first time since returning with the artifacts, his academic detachment giving way to thoughtful consideration. If the original makers designed both the Omnitrix and Mr. Tennyson's genetic compatibility with it, perhaps the solution lies not in opposition but redirection. Hope turned toward the professor, sudden suspicion flaring. Throughout their collaboration, Haraway had been supportive but detached, interested in the academic aspects of dimensional theory rather than practical applications. Now, his suggestion carried undertones that triggered warning signals in her magical senses. What exactly are you suggesting, Professor? She asked carefully, subtly adjusting her stance to bring her staff into defensive position. Haraway removed his glasses, and with the gesture, something fundamental changed in his presence. The scholarly awkwardness fell away like a discarded costume, Revia. Ling calculated precision in his movements, authoritative confidence in his bearing. The convergence represents the next phase of universal evolution, Ms. Chamberlain. His voice carried new resonance. CE, not the harmonic overlay the knight had manifested, but something more controlled, practiced. Fighting cosmic processes of this magnitude is like fighting gravity, a fundamental misunderstanding of one's place in the natural order. Ben's hand moved toward the Omnitrix, but Haraway raised a device previously concealed within his academic attire. Red energy pulsed from it, and the Omnitrix responded with an error tone. Transformation functions temporarily locked. Apologies for the deception, Haraway continued conversationally. But my role in this process required establishing trust. The dimensional specialist most likely to detect the anchor point's activation. He nodded toward Hope with something like professional respect. You've performed admirably, containing a phenomenon that should have breached dimensional barriers days ago. You're with them, Hope realized, pieces falling into place. The Forever Knights. A crude simplification, but functionally accurate. Arrowway, or whoever he truly was, gestured toward the contained knights. Though my role differs somewhat from our armored colleagues. They prepare the way through direct action. I monitor and assess own within academic structures where unusual events might otherwise draw unwanted attention. Kai had edged closer to Ben during this exchange, her hand moving subtly toward what Hope now recognized as concealed plumber technology beneath her jacket. The archaeologist's eyes met Hope's briefly, a silent coordination between women who had only just met but recognized the necessity of unified response. And what role do you play exactly? Ben asked, attention focused on Haraway while creating distraction for the women to position themselves. Observer, evaluator, guide when necessary. Haraway approached the dimensional sphere with the confidence of someone who understood exactly what it represented. The convergence has occurred countless times across cosmic history, Mr. Tennyson. Some species ascend to join the original maker's grand design. Others provide raw material for future evolutionary cycles. And humans? Kai asked, scientific curiosity seemingly genuine despite the tactical situation. Where do we fall in this evaluation? Haraway smiled thinly. Humanity as a whole, undetermined. Certain genetic lines show remarkable potential, the Tennyson bloodline being perhaps the most prominent example. Others, he shrugged with academic detachment, will contribute their genetic material to future seeding cycles. Hope had heard enough. With subtle movement, she Octiva. A protective sigil prepared during the previous battle, one designed specifically to counter technological disruption. Ben's Omnitrix responded immediately, the error tone ceasing as its functions restored. 4 arms. Ben transformed with practiced speed, but again the process manifested differently than Hope remembered, smoother, the Tetraman form emerging with enhanced muscular definition. And deeper crimson coloration that suggested evolutionary optimization. Simultaneously, Kai deployed her concealed plumber technology, not a weapon but a containment device that expanded to create a secondary barrier around the dimensional sphere, reinforcing Hope's magical containment. Haraway sighed with what seemed like genuine disappointment. Such wasted effort. The convergence cannot be prevented, only shaped. He tapped the device in his hand, which emitted a signal that caused the contained Forever Knight's armor to reconfigure, breaking down Ben's energy containment from within. Didn't wait for the knights to free themselves completely. With precise gestures, she directed magical energy through the Livingston prism, refracting it into 7 distinct streams that targeted weak points in Haraway's device and the knight's armor simultaneously. Their systems are integrated with the anchor point, she called to her allies, maintaining the attack while reinforcing dimensional containment. Disrupting their technology affects the anchor's stability. Ben understood immediately, 4 powerful arms grasping Haraway before he could activate further countermeasures. The Professor struggled with surprising strength for an academic, revealing combat training beneath the scholarly facade. The Omnitrix responds to the convergence because it was designed to do so, Haraway said through gritted teeth. Fighting your purpose is fighting your own nature, Tennyson. Wouldn't be the first time. Ben's transformed features set with determination as he neutralized Haraway's device with precise application of Tetraman strength. I've spent years using this watch in ways its creator never intended. Why stop now? The knights had nearly freed themselves from containment. Armor reconfiguring to counter Hope's magical attack. Kai interceded, her archaeological equipment revealing unexpected versatility as she deployed what appeared to be cataloging tools that precisely targeted junction points in their armor. Xenoarchaeology involves more than just digging up artifacts, she explained, noting Hope's surprised expression. Sometimes we need to neutralize defenses designed to last millennia. The coordinated assault, magical, physical, and technological, overwhelmed the Knights' systems. Their armor locked in mid-reconfiguration, trapping them more effectively than the original containment. Haraway, however, maintained his calm demeanor despite Ben's restraining grip. "You've won nothing," he stated with the certainty of someone with knowledge beyond the immediate situation. "The convergence progresses at hundreds of anchor points globally. This is merely one node in a vast network." His gaze shifted to the dimensional sphere, where images continued to flow through the Livingston prism. "And even now, the original makers observe your resistance, incorporating it into their evaluation." The sphere pulsed as if confirming his words, projecting clearer images of the 7 worlds marked for convergence. On each planet, similar battles unfolded, local defenders resisting the activation of anchor points, unaware they fought merely one facet of a multidimensional process. "They're testing us," Hope realized, insight crystallizing as she interpreted the magical signatures. The resistance itself is part of the evaluation. They're assessing how each species responds to existential threat. Ben's transformed features registered understanding followed by determination. "Then let's make sure our response is crystal clear." Still restraining Haraway, he turned to Hope and Kai. "We need to communicate with defenders at other anchor points, coordinate resistance globally instead of fighting isolated battles." Hope nodded, mind already calculating possibilities. "The anchor points themselves form a network. If we can recalibrate this one from connection to communication." She adjusted her magical configuration, directing energy through the Livingston prism in new patterns. "Kai, your archaeological database might help identify other active sites." Already on it, Kai accessed her equipment, cross-referencing known archaeological locations with energy signatures matching the anchor point. "I'm detecting similar activations at 27 major sites globally, all with historical significance spanning multiple civilizations." The dimensional sphere responded to Hope's recalibration, its projection shifting from passive observation to active interface. Through the Livingston prism, they glimpsed defenders at other anchor points. Some familiar faces among the plumbers, others unknown heroes fighting their own battles against local manifestations of the convergence. "It's working," Hope confirmed, maintaining the delicate balance between containing the anchor point and repurposing its connection. "We can establish communication with other sites through the same network the original makers are using." Haraway laughed softly despite his captivity. "Clever. Using their own system against them. But do you really believe they didn't anticipate resistance? Adaptation to threat is a fundamental evolutionary principle, one they've been testing for millennia." Quote, "Maybe they anticipated resistance," Ben acknowledged, transformed features set with determination. "But I bet they didn't anticipate us working together." He looked from Hope to Kai, then toward the communication network they'd established through the anchor point. "The original makers want to evaluate species in isolation, judge them against predetermined criteria. So let's change the parameters of their test." Through the dimensional interface, the first connection solidified, a window opening to a temple complex in Cambodia where plumber agents led manifestations similar to those in Arkham. Among them, Hope recognized a familiar face. Rook Blanco, Ben's former partner, coordinating the defense with characteristic efficiency. Rook's expression registered surprise followed by relief. "How are you communicating through the dimensional distortion? Our equipment cannot penetrate the interference." "Long story short, we're using their own network against them," Ben replied. "Listen, these manifestations are happening globally. They're part of something called the convergence, a test run by beings called the original makers who apparently created the foundation for the Omnitrix and seeded evolutionary potential across multiple worlds." Rook absorbed this information with remarkable composure. "That aligns with what we have discovered here. The temple contains references to beings who shaped life from the stars and promised to return when 7 worlds align as one. They're returning to evaluate which species deserve continuation," Kai added, stepping into view of the communication portal, "and to harvest genetic material from those deemed unworthy." "Dr. Green," Rook acknowledged with a nod. "Your grandfather's research has proven invaluable in understanding these sites." The mention of West Green caught Hope's attention, another connection to knowledge that predated their current crisis. Before she could question it, Additional communication portals opened through the anchor point. Defenders at sites in Egypt, Peru, Antarctica, Japan, and elsewhere, all battling local manifestations of the convergence. Among the faces, Hope recognized more allies. Max Tennyson coordinating global response from Plummer headquarters, Gwen Tennyson and Kevin Levin securing a site in Rome, Cooper Daniels working with Tech HNO logical countermeasures at a location that appeared to be beneath Stonehenge. The network is expanding, Hope noted, maintaining the delicate magical balance required for communication without further destabilizing the anchor point. We're connecting to all active sites simultaneously. Ben addressed the assembled defenders through the network, his transformed voice carrying authority earned through years of saving the universe. Everyone listen, we're dealing with a coordinated event called the convergence. Beings who seeded evolutionary potential across multiple worlds are returning to evaluate which species deserve to continue existing and which get harvested for raw genetic material. The Forever Knights are facilitating their return, Kai added, gesturing toward their captives. They believe certain human bloodlines will ascend during the evaluation while others serve as genetic resources. Typical, Kevin's voice came through the Roman connection. Secret society thinkin'. Gee, they'll get special treatment from the cosmic overlords. Gwen appeared beside him, her expression concerned but focused. Ben, something's affecting anodite energy globally. Every practitioner connected to the mana field experienced simultaneous disruption when the convergence began. The original makers consider magical potential a key evolutionary metric, Hope explained, recognizing the significance. They're likely assessing the development of magical aptitude across affected species. Max Tennyson's voice cut through the growing crosstalk. Whatever their purpose, we need a coordinated response. These anchor points appear connected, effects at one site ripple through the entire network. Which means we might be able to use that connection, Ben suggested, forearms gesturing toward the dimensional sphere. Hope figured out how to repurpose this anchor point from connection to communication. If we can do the same globally, we could establish a counter-network, Cooper suggested through the Stonehenge connection. Use their own dimensional system to coordinate defense instead of facilitating their evaluation. Hope considered the magical implications, calculating possibilities with the disciplined precision that had replaced her youthful impulsiveness. It's possible, but risky. The anchor points are fundamentally their technology, designed for their purpose. Repurposing them requires perfect synchronization across all sites. And if we fail? Gwen asked, the practical question cutting to the heart of their situation. Accelerated convergence, Hope admitted, potentially opening dimensional gateways large enough for physical manifestation of their evaluation mechanisms. Silence fell across the network as defenders considered these stakes. Finally, Max spoke with the authority of decades of experience. We've faced impossible odds before. What do you need to make this work? Hope glanced at Ben, then Kai, drawing strength from their focused determination. A precise understanding of each anchor point's configuration, synchronized magical and technological countermeasures, and she hesitated, the scope of what she proposed settling fully in her mind. Someone at each location with sufficient dimensional understanding to implement the recalibration. Which means we need to split up, Ben concluded, meeting Hope's gaze with understanding. Cover the primary anchor points personally while coordinating with local defenders at the others. From his restrained position, Haraway laughed softly. Such ambition. You propose to reprog ram a multidimensional network established by beings who transcend conventional spacetime, using knowledge you've assembled in hours against their millennia of design. He shook his head with something like genuine pity. The original makers created the very concept of transformation, Mr. Tennyson. Do you truly believe they didn't account for resistance in their evaluation parameters? Maybe they did, Ben acknowledged. Transformed features set with determination. But here's the thing about evaluations, sometimes the test takers surprise the examiners. Hope maintained the communication net. Work as they established a coordinated strategy. Ben would secure the primary anchor point in the New Mexico desert where the convergence had first manifested. Gwen would handle the Roman site with its connection to magical ley lines. Hope would remain in Arkham to stabilize the academic anchor point, and Kai would investigate her grandfather's sealed records at Plummer headquarters, searching for historical context that might provide advantage. The dimensional sphere pulsed again as their planning concluded, projecting a new image through the Livingston prism, a countdown timer indicating 3 days until complete convergence. Beneath it, the 7 marked worlds rotated in perfect synchronization, their alignment nearly complete. 3 days, Ben noted grimly. To stop beings who created the foundation for the Omnitrix. Designed my family's genetics for compatibility with it, and have been manipulating evolution across 7 worlds for millennia. His transformed features settled into a determined expression Hope recognized from years of witnessing his heroism from both sides of the battlefield. We've faced worse odds, have we? Hope asked quietly, magical senses registering. The true magnitude of what they confronted. These beings exist beyond conventional dimensions, Ben. They created the evolutionary potential that produced every species in the Omnitrix, possibly humanity itself. All the more reason they don't get to decide our fate now, Ben replied, conviction unwavering. Whatever they designed us to be, we've become something else through our own choices. That's worth fighting for. The simple truth in his statement resonated with Hope's own journey, from the power-hungry Charmcaster to the woman who now worked to restore balance rather than exploit chaos. Design wasn't destiny. Purpose came from choice rather than origin. As the gathered defenders finalized their strategy, Hope maintained the delicate balance of energies connecting them through the dimensional network. Through the Livingston prism, she caught glimpses of the original makers observing their coordination with what might have been curiosity, if such beings experienced anything resembling human emotion. One final image formed in the prism before the communication concluded, a representation of DNA strands from multiple species, including human, intertwining in patterns that suggested deliberate design rather than random evolution. At the center of this genetic map stood a perfect representation of the Omnitrix, its structure echoed in the molecular patterns of life itself across 7 worlds. The message was unmistakable. The connection between the Omnitrix, Ben Tennyson, and the original makers ran deeper than any of them had imagined, woven into the very fabric of Fey across multiple worlds and dimensions. As the communication network closed and defenders departed for their assigned locations, Hope found herself momentarily alone with Ben and Kai. The plumbers had arrived to secure Haraway and the Forever Knights, leaving the 3 of them to finalize their individual missions. We have 3 days to stop cosmic architects from harvesting worlds they seed. With evolutionary potential millennia ago, Hope summarized, the enormity of their task settling like cold stone in her stomach. Using technology and magic they designed, genetic compatibility they engineered, and dimensional understanding we've assembled in hours. When you put it that way, it sounds almost impossible, Kai noted with unexpected dry humor. Almost impossible is kind of our specialty, Ben replied, having reverted to human form. The Omnitrix pulsed on his wrist, its green light synchronized with the contained dimensional sphere, a constant reminder of their connection to the entities they now opposed. Hope studied Ben with new perspective, seeing beyond the obnoxious child who had once dismissed her as merely another enemy. The man who stood before her carried the weight of universal responsibility with hard-earned confidence, his brashness tempered by experience without losing the fundamental optimism that had always defined him. Be careful with the Omnitrix, she advised. Professional concern masking deeper emotions she wasn't prepared to examine. If it truly is their technology, using it might advance their agenda even as you fight against it. I know. Ben glanced at the device. Conflict evident in his expression. But it's also the best weapon we have against them. Another design flaw they didn't anticipate, giving their instrument to someone stubborn enough to use it against them. Hope found herself smiling despite the gravity of their situation. Stubborn is certainly one word for it. I prefer determined, Kai suggested, her own SMI. Indicating growing rapport with Hope despite their brief acquaintance. The moment of levity passed as Ben checked the time. I need to reach the desert site before the Forever Knights regroup there. Kai, you'll coordinate with Max at Plumber headquarters. At her nod, he turned to Hope. And you'll secure this anchor point. And research countermeasures against dimensional harvesting, Hope confirmed. If anyone has records of previous convergences, they'll be in Arkham's restricted archives. Ben hesitated, something unspoken hanging between them. Hope, thank you, for everything you've done here. For who you've become. The simple sincerity in his voice carried weight beyond the words themselves. People change, she replied softly, echoing her earlier statement to the Knights. Sometimes they even grow up. Understanding passed between them, recognition of parallel journeys from what they had been to what they had chosen to become. Design wasn't destiny for either of them. Purpose came through choice rather than origin. As Ben and Kai departed, Hope returned to the contained dimensional sphere, studying it with the disciplined focus of a specialist rather than the power-hungry ambition of her youth. Through the Livingston prism, she caught one final glimpse of the original makers observing their preparations with what might have been, if such beings experienced anything resembling human emotion, concern. The convergence had begun, initiated by beings who had designed the very foundations of life across 7 worlds. But they had created something beyond their Ontral, species that valued choice over design, freedom over predetermined purpose. In 3 days, they would discover whether that unexpected evolution represented their greatest success or their most significant failure. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Resonant Frequencies. Julie Yamamoto stood on the rooftop of Bellwood's tallest skyscraper, the pre-dawn air crisp against her skin. The city sprawled below like a circuit board, streetlights tracing patterns that mirrored the stars above. But Julie wasn't admiring the view, she was hunting for anomalies. "Anything yet, Ship?" she asked, her breath forming delicate clouds in the cold air. The sentient galvanic mechamorph symbiote that had once been little more than an affectionate pet now formed an elegant exoskeleton around her left arm, its CK surface inlaid with intricate green circuitry. Ship had evolved considerably in the 5 years since she'd left Bellwood for the international tennis circuit, a journey that had taken her far beyond sports fame into realms she'd never anticipated. "Ship, it responded, but no longer in the simplistic chirps that had once defined its communication. The syllables carried complex harmonic overtones, conveying detailed information directly to Julie through their enhanced neural connection. Frequency detected, Julie translated aloud from the data streaming through their link. Subspace band, non-standard encryption. Same pattern as Tokyo and Cairo. She tapped a sleek communications device at her ear. "You getting this, Drive?" "Friedkin." "Crystal clear," responded Adwaita Friedkin, 4. Mer headmistress of Friedkin University and current director of the Plumbers, Xenocommunication Division. That's the 5th major metropolitan center to register these signals in the past 72 hours. Whatever's transmitting, it's escalating its broadcast pattern. Julie allowed Ship to extend further up her arm, the symbiote reconfiguring into a sophisticated scanning array. Their partners. Hip had evolved from pet and owner into something unprecedented, a true symbiosis where Ship's technological capabilities merged with Julie's strategic thinking and athletic precision. The signal's different this time, Julie noted, interpreting data through their neural link. Previous broadcasts were, I'd say, exploratory. This one feels targeted, like it's searching for something specific. Through their connection, she felt Ship's agreement, along with something else. Concern, perhaps, or recognition. The symbiote's emotional responses had become increasingly complex as their bond deepened. Ship thinks it's familiar somehow, Julie added, brow furrowing. Like it's encountered this communication protocol before, but can't quite place it. That tracks with our analysis, Drive. Friedkin replied. The signal utilizes elements of galvanic mechamorph base code, but with structures no known mechamorph has ever produced. It's as though something is trying to communicate specifically with mechamorph technology using a predecessor language, for lack of a better term. Julie processed this information with the measured calm that had become her trademark in crisis situations. 5 years ago, such revelations would have overwhelmed her, the ordinary human girl thrown into extraordinary circumstances through her relationship with Ben Tennyson. Now, after years of dedicated training and accumulated experience, she approached the situation with professional detachment. I'm going to try a direct interface, she decided, finding a sheltered position on the rooftop. Ship's synthesis capabilities have improved since our last attempt. Proceed with caution, Drive. Friedkin advised. The last technician who attempted direct decryption experienced significant neural feedback. Julie allowed herself a small smile. With all due respect, Doctor, no other technician has a symbiotic neural link with a galvanic mechamorph. She settled into a cross-legged position, a posture T had belied the sophisticated technology activating around her. Ship flowed over more of her body, not the complete armor configuration they used in combat situations, but a partial integration focused on neural enhancement. Green circuitry patterns extended delicate filaments to her temples, establishing deeper connection than their standard communication link. "Ready, ship?" she asked, though the question was largely ceremonial. Through their bond, she already felt the symbiote's eager agreement. "Ship," it confirmed, the single syllable carrying harmonics of excitement, determination, and protective concern. Julie closed her eyes, allowing her consciousness to merge more fully with Ship's technological awareness. Their connection had grown so sophisticated that the boundary between and intuition and artificial intelligence had begun to blur, creating a hybrid perception uniquely suited to interpreting alien communication. The signal revealed itself not as sound or text but as multi-dimensional patterns, mathematical relationships expressing concepts beyond conventional language. Julie and Ship processed these patterns together, her human contextual understanding complementing He symbiote's technological interpretation. Origin, purpose, connection, warning. Julie translated mentally, organizing the abstract concepts into something approximating human language. Return, evaluation, harvest, convergence. The signal intensified, as if responding to their successful interpretation. New patterns emerged, more specific and urgent. 7. Systems, alignment, imminent. Original makers, return, judgment. Original makers. Julie whispered, the term triggering something in Ship's memory core. The symbiote's circuitry flashed with recognition, ancient data fragments activating from dormant storage. Through their connection, Julie glimpsed fragments of knowledge imprinted in Ship's most fundamental programming, beings of impossible complexity who had established the evolutionary foundation for numerous species, including the galvanic mechamorphs. Not their direct creators, but the architects who had established the conditions from which their species eventually emerged. "Dr. Friedkin," Julie called, maintaining the delicate connection to the signal. "We've got partial translation. It's a warning about something called the original makers, returning to evaluate evolutionary development across 7-star systems." Quote, "The original makers." Friedkin's voice sharpened with recognition. "That designation appears in several ancient texts we've been studying since the anomalies began." One moment, the connection went silent briefly before returning. "Julie, you need to disengage immediately. We're detecting energy buildup in the signal that suggests imminent." The warning came too late. The transmission pattern shifted abruptly, from communication to activation. Energy surged through the connection, overwhelming Julie and Ship's carefully established interface. Pain NCED through Julie's consciousness as foreign data forced its way through their bond, ancient instructions activating dormant protocols within Ship's fundamental programming. "Ship," Julie gasped, GHTING to maintain control of their connection as the symbiote's circuitry flickered erratically across her skin. Through their bond, she felt Ship's confusion and distress as ancient command sequence. Triggered responses the evolved mechamorph no longer recognized. With tremendous effort, Julie implemented the emergency disconnection protocol they had developed for worst-case scenarios. The neural filaments retracted from her temples, Ship's form flowing back to her left arm in a defensive configuration as they severed the external connection. Gasping, Julie opened her eyes to find the pre-dawn sky transformed. Above Bellwood, stars shifted position in impossible patterns, forming configurations that matched fragments of the transmission they had just received. Green light pulsed across the heavens, reminiscent of the Omnitrix's signature energy but vastly amplified. "Dr. Friedkin," Julie managed, her voice steady despite the residual pain from the forced disconnection. "Are you seeing this?" No response came through the communication device. Across the city, lights flickered as power fluctuations rippled through the grid. In the distance, emergency sirens began their mournful wail as Bellwood's infrastructure responded to the inexplicable astronomical event. Ship pulsed against Julie's arm, its surface temporarily unstable as it processed the forced activation of ancient protocols. Through their bond, Julie felt its confusion giving way to understanding and alarm. "Ship, what is it? What did you see?" she asked, placing her right hand over the symbiote in a gesture had become instinctive during their years together. Instead of responding through their neural link, Ship flowed from her arm, forming a 3-dimensional projection in the air between them. The Holographic displays showed 7-star systems arranged in perfect alignment, with Earth prominently featured among them. Around each world, mechanical constructs of impossible complexity appeared, the IR design incorporating elements Julie recognized from galvanic mechamorph technology but far more advanced. Harvesters, Julie translated from the concept ship conveyed through their bond. There, sending harvesting mechanisms to evaluate evolutionary development. Ship's projection shifted, showing these mechanisms descending to planetary surfaces, scanning indigenous life forms, and collecting specimens. The collection process appeared clinical rather than violent, less invasion and more methodical sampling. But the scale was staggering, indicating evaluation of entire species rather than individual organisms. The projection flickered and died as Ship reintegrated with Julie's arm, clearly exhausted by the effort of generating such detailed imagery while still recovering from the signal's interference. Rest, Julie told the symbiote, genuine concern in her voice. Their relationship had long since transcended owner and pet, or even user and tool. Ship was her partner, her CL.O.sest companion through years of challenges no ordinary tennis pro should have faced. We need to contact Plumber headquarters immediately. But as she activated her emergency communication protocols, only static responded. Whatever had affected Bellwood's power grid had also compromised conventional communications systems. Julie assessed her options with practical efficiency, another skill honed through years of unexpected crises. Looks like we're doing this the old-fashioned way, she decided, allowing Ship to form a lightweight exoskeleton around her lower limbs. The configuration enhanced her already impressive athletic abilities, allowing her to leap from the rooftop to an adjacent building with graceful precision. As Julie made her way across Bellwood's skyline, the city below descended into controlled chaos. Traffic signals malfunctioned, vehicles stalled, and civilians emerged from buildings to gaze at the impossible astronomical event overhead. The green light pulsing across the sky had intensified, forming patterns identical to those in Ship's projection. Julie's destination was a nondescript office building 15 blocks from her original position, one of several sealed plumber outposts established throughout Bellwood after repeated alien incursions had made the city a recognized hotspot for extraterrestrial activity. If standard communications were down, the outpost would have emergency protocols and equipment for contacting headquarters. She covered the distance in minutes, Ship's enhancements allowing her to traverse obstacles with superhuman agility. The symbiote had recovered enough to maintain the exoskeleton configuration, though Julie could feel its continued distress through their bond. Whatever the signal had activated in Ship's programming remained active, ancient protocols running in the background of its consciousness like forgotten memories suddenly restored. The plumber outpost appeared abandoned when Julie arrived, its windows dark despite the emergency conditions. Security protocols should have activated automatically, bringing the facility to full alert status during any unexplained phenomena. Something's wrong, Julie murmured, approaching cautiously. Ship flowed from her legs to her right arm, forming a compact defensive configuration they had developed during a particularly challenging situation in Singapore 2 years ago. The entrance registered Julie's plumber consultant credentials without issue, security doors sliding open to reveal the darkened interior. Emergency lighting cast faint green illumination ACR/OS workstations that should have been occupied by monitoring personnel. "Hello," Julie called, moving through the space with practiced caution. "This is Special Consultant Yamamoto. Is anyone here?" No verbal response came, but Julie's enhanced hearing, another benefit of her symbiosis with Ship, detected movement from the central operations room. She approached the partially open door, Ship's defensive configuration humming softly as it prepared for potential threats. The operations center contained the outpost's primary monitoring equipment, communication systems, and emergency response protocols. As Julie entered, she found the source of the movement, a single plumber technician working frantically at a central console, surrounded by disabled monitoring stations. "Oh, thank goodness," the technician exclaimed, turning at Julie's entrance. "Special Consultant Yamamoto, we've been trying to reach you since the signal activated." Julie recognized the woman, Alana Zeph, a recent recruit specializing in xenocommunications. Her expression showed relief, but something in her eyes triggered Julie's carefully honed instincts. Years of facing disguised opponents had taught her to Nye's subtle inconsistencies in human behavior. Where is everyone else? Julie asked, maintaining a casual tone while signaling Ship through their neural link to scan the technician. This facility should be at full staffing during an emergency. Emergency deployment to secondary locations, Alana replied smoothly. The signal's been affecting different parts of the city differently. I stayed to maintain communication protocols. She gestured toward the central console. I've almost re-established connection with headquarters. They're especially interested in your findings regarding the transmission. Ship completed its scan, results flowing directly into Julie's consciousness. Biological readings inconsistent with previous baseline for Technician Zeph. Subtle molecular discrepancies detected. Assessment. Not fully human. Julie maintained her composed expression, years of high-stakes competition having perfected her poker face. Interesting that you knew I was working on the transmission, Alana. That operation was classified Level 7. The technician's expression faltered momentarily before recovering. All classifications were suspended when the emergency protocols activated. Standard procedure. Of course. Julie agreed pleasantly, moving casually toward the nearest workstation. I should file my report directly. The signal contained specific warnings about something called the original makers, returning to evaluate evolutionary development. The original makers, the technician repeated, something changing in her voice, a subtle harmonic quality emerging beneath the human vocalization. Yes, their return approaches. The convergence accelerates with each activated node. In a fluid motion that belied her physical limitations, Alana vaulted over the central console. Her form rippling as the human disguise became increasingly difficult to maintain. Beneath the surface, glimpses of crystalline structure became visible, similar to Petrosapian composition but with unprecedented fluidity. Your symbiotic bond with the mechamorph is particularly interesting, the being observed, Alana's voice now completely overlaid with alien harmonics. An evolutionary adaptation we hadn't anticipated. The mechamorph species was designed for technological integration, but neural symbiosis with other life forms represents significant advancement. Julie backed toward the exit, Ship flowing to cover more of her body in response to the obvious threat. Who are you? What have you done with the real Alana? Technician Zeph is unharmed, merely temporarily repurposed. The crystalline structure became more pronounced as the disguise continued degrading. I am a precursor evaluation unit, an advanced mechanism sent to assess specific evolutionary developments before the primary convergence completes. Quote, Ship expanded further, covering Julie's torso and both arms in protective configuration. Through their neural link, Julie felt the symbiote's recognition of He entity before them, not from personal experience but from foundational programming activated by the recent signal. You're connected to the original makers, Julie stated, continuing her strategic retreat toward the exit while assessing combat options. The operations center's confined space limited maneuverability but offered potential tactical advantages if she could reach the emergency equipment lockers. I am an extension of their evaluative function, the entity confirmed. Your companion recognizes my purpose. The galvanic mechamorph species originated from seeded evolutionary potential established by the original makers. Their base programming contains recognition protocols for evaluation cycles. Ship pulsed against Julie's skin, confirming the entity's statement while conveying additional context through their neural link. The symbiote had indeed recognized something fundamental about the entity, a connection to the evolutionary foundation from which its entire species had developed. And what exactly does your evaluation involve? Julie asked, buying time as she analyzed escape routes and defensive options. Through their bond, she directed Ship to prepare their most advanced combat configuration while maintaining the current protective coverage. Comprehensive assessment of evolutionary development against established parameters, the entity explained with clinical detachment. Your symbiotic relationship represents unexpected adaptation, integration between species not originally designed for direct neural compatibility. Most interesting. The being moved with unnatural speed, crystalline limbs extending across the room to block Julie's path to the exit. A detailed analysis is required. Please submit to examination. I'll pass, thanks, Julie replied. Years of facing alien threats having cured her of any inclination to cooperate with suspicious entities. With practiced coordination, she and Ship activated their primary combat configuration. The symbiote flowed across her entire body, forming the sleek armor they had refined through years of partnership. Unlike the bulky, somewhat haphazard coverage Ship had provided in their early days together. This configuration represented the peak of their evolved symbiosis, a perfect integration of galvanic mechamorph technology with human biomechanics. Glowing green circuitry accentuated the midnight black surface, power flowing through patterns optimized for Julie's specific movement style. The helmet formed last, its design elegantly functional rather than intimidatingly alien, with expanded visual capabilities and enhanced neural connection. Ship. The symbiote declared through external speakers, the simple phrase carrying complex emotional harmonics that translated roughly to determined defiance. The evaluation unit paused, crystalline structure refracting light as it reassessed the transformed human before it. Fascinating. Complete neural technological integration without loss of individual consciousness. Both entities maintained within the symbiosis. Something like scientific curiosity entered its tone. This exceeds projected evolutionary parameters for both species. Julie didn't waste time on further conversation. With Ship's enhancements providing superhuman speed and strength, she launched herself toward the emergency equipment lockers rather than the blocked exit. Their best chance wasn't direct confrontation but tactical advantage through specialized gear. The evaluation unit reacted with impossible speed, crystalline appendages reconfiguring to intercept her trajectory. Julie had anticipated this, using a tennis champion's footwork, enhanced by Ship's technology, to change direction mid-leap. She bounded off a monitoring station, somersaulted over an extending crystal appendage, and landed precisely before the equipment locker. Ship, containment protocol, Julie commanded, both verbally and through their neural link. The symbiote responded instantly, a portion of its mass flowing from their integrated armor to form a specialized containment field projector, technology they had developed alongside Plummer scientists specifically for capturing unknown entities. The device activated, generating a field calibrated to adapt to the crystalline being's unusual composition. Interesting tactical choice, the evaluation unit observed, see me. NGLY unconcerned as the containment field expanded around it. Utilizing technological augmentation to compensate for biological limitations while maintaining species-specific strategic thinking. The field stabilized, its energy matrix adjusting to the entity's crystalline structure. For a moment, it appeared the containment had succeeded, until the evaluation unit simply phased through the energy barrier. Its molecular composition shifting to a state that existed partially outside conventional physical laws. Standard containment technology is insufficient for precursor units, it stated, almost apologetic. We exist simultaneously in multiple phases of matter. Julie accessed the emergency locker, retrieving a more specialized device while maintaining distance from the advancing entity. Ship, analysis. What are we dealing with exactly? Through their neural link, Ship conveyed its assessment. Entity exists in quantum superposition. Physical form is projection interface rather than true containment. Connection to extra-dimensional consciousness detected. So it's basically an avatar, Julie translated, activating the device, a prototype phase disruptor designed by Blukik and D. Reba for entities that existed outside normal space-time. Something much bigger projecting a physical presence here. A simplified but essentially accurate assessment, the evaluation unit confirmed, continuing its methodical approach. My primary consciousness exists within the evaluation matrix established by the original makers. This projection allows direct interaction with evaluation subjects. The phase disruptor powered up, emitting a field designed to force multidimensional entities into a single phase state. The evaluation unit paused, its crystalline structure momentarily destabilizing as the device affected its quantum superposition. Now, Ship, Julie commanded. The symbiote extended from their armor configuration, forming specialized restraints designed to interact with phase-disrupted matter. The technological ingenuity demonstrated in this response was light years beyond what the playful, pet, mechamorph had been capable of years ago, evidence of Ship's own evolution alongside Julie. The restraints encircled the destabilized evaluation unit, forcing its scattered quantum state into a more unified configuration. For a moment, it appeared they had succeeded in containing the entity, until its crystalline structure began to resonate at frequencies that disrupted both the phase disruptor and Ship's restraints. Your tactical adaptation is impressive, the entity observed, its form stabilizing as it overcame their technology. Coordinated response between biological strategy and technological implementation. Symbiotic evolution functioning as designed. As designed, Julie questioned, retreating strategically while ship reconfigured their armor for maximum defense. What do you mean? The potential for symbiotic relationship between humans and mecham. ORPHS was seeded in both species' foundational genetics, the evaluation unit explained with clinical detachment. Your partnership represents successful expression of that potential, though the neural integration exceeds projected parameters. This revelation hit Julie with unexpected force. Her partnership with Ship, something she had always considered a unique development born from extraordinary circumstances and mutual growth, had been anticipated millennia ago, potentially designed into both their species. Before she could process this information, the central communication console activated independently. Green light pulsing across its surface in patterns matching the astronomical anomalies visible outside. The evaluation unit turned toward it, crystalline structure resonating in response. The convergence accelerates, it stated. Primary alignment approaches completion. The console screen displayed a star map showing 7 systems, including Earth's, approaching perfect astronomical alignment. Around each world, mechanical constructs appeared, similar to those Ship had shown in its earlier projection but with greater detail and clarity. The harvesters prepare for deployment, the evaluation unit continued. Evaluation will proceed according to established parameters. Julie used this momentary distraction to access her emergency communication device, a direct link queue. Quantum entanglement transmitter keyed to Plumber headquarters that functioned independently of conventional communication networks. Ship extended a connector from their armor configuration, interfacing G with the device to boost its signal strength. Emergency Protocol Zeta 9, Julie transmitted. Bellwood Outpost 7 compromised. Unknown entity claiming connection to original makers, present. Requesting immediate response and data on astronomical anomalies affecting local space. The quantum transmitter functioned despite the widespread communication disruption, connecting directly to P. Lumber headquarters through entangled particles that ignored conventional interference. The response came almost immediately, but not as text or voice. Instead, the small device projected a holographic display showing Magister Tennyson himself. Julie. Thank goodness you're all right. Max's expression showed genuine relief. We've been trying to reach you since the signal activated. Your data transmission about the original makers matches intelligence we're receiving from multiple fronts. I'm looking at one of their evaluation units right now, Julie replied, maintaining tactical awareness of the entity's position while communicating. It seems very interested in my partnership with Ship. Max's expression darkened. That tracks with what we're learning. These beings apparently seed evolutionary potential across multiple species, including humans and galvanic mechamorphs. They're returning to evaluate which evolutionary paths merit continuation. The evaluation unit turned from the console, its attention recaptured by Julie's communication. Magister Maxwell Tennyson, it acknowledged, crystalline structure reconfiguring to face the holographic projection. Your genetic L-in holds particular significance in the evaluation parameters. The Tennyson bloodline has consistently demonstrated exceptional compatibility with transformative technologies, as designed. Max's holographic image narrowed its eyes. As designed, you're claiming our family was specifically engineered for compatibility with the Omnitrix. The instrument you call Omnitrix represents merely one expression of original maker technology. The entity clarified. The Tennyson genetic line was cultivated across generations to optimize interface potential with transformative systems. Your grandson represents the culmination of this guided development. Julie processed this information alongside her immediate tactical situation. Max, where is Ben now? Has he encountered these entities? Ben is currently investigating the primary convergence site in New Mexico with Dr. Green, Max replied, tactical pragmatism overriding any concern about sharing information in front of the entity. Similar, our evaluation units have appeared at multiple locations globally. Gwen and Kevin are containing one in Rome, and Hope Chamberlain is managing another in Arkham. The mention of multiple simultaneous ANF stations confirmed Julie's suspicion that they faced a coordinated global event rather than isolated incidents. The reference to Hope Chamberlain, formerly Charmcaster, suggested magical dimensions to the crisis as well. Consistent with the multidimensional nature of the evaluation unit before her. Understood, Julie acknowledged, ship reconfiguring their armor based on the updated threat assessment. Orders. Secure your location if possible, Max instructed. Otherwise, fall back to headquarters. We're coordinating global response and need your first-hand intelligence on these evaluation units. The entity observed this exchange with what might have been scientific interest. Hierarchical response coordination. Interesting adaptation to crisis situations. Its crystalline structure shifted, becoming more streamlined. Your species demonstrates remarkable organizational capacity despite limited telepathic connection. We call it teamwork, Julie replied dryly. Something you might want to consider before evaluating species for harvesting. The evaluation process is not punitive but essential, the entity stated. Evolutionary potential requires periodic assessment and refinement. The worthy ascend. Others contribute genetic material to future seeding cycles. The clinical detachment with which it discussed potentially harvesting entire species sent chills down Julie's spine despite ship's temperature regulation. Through their neural link, she felt the symbiote's equal dismay at the entity's casual discussion of what amounted to evolutionary culling. Magister, Julie addressed Max's hologram. I'm going to secure this entity if possible and then proceed to headquarters. Acknowledged, Max replied. Be careful, Julie. These beings operate on technological principles beyond even Galvan understanding. Even Azimuth is struggling to comprehend their full capabilities. As Max's holographic image faded, Julie assessed her tactical options with practiced efficiency. Direct confrontation had proven ineffective against the entity's multidimensional nature. Containment technology had failed to restrict its movements. A new approach was required. Through their neural link, ship suggested an alternative strategy: communication, understanding, negotiation. The symbiote's evolution had indeed been remarkable, from a playful pet capable only of mimicry, to a sophisticated intelligence that now proposed diplomatic solutions alongside tactical ones. Julie considered the suggestion carefully, recognizing its merit despite her combat-ready stance. You say you're here to evaluate evolutionary development, she addressed the entity directly. Well, here's something to evaluate. We've evolved beyond accepting arbitrary judgment from absent creators. The species on this world, human, mechamorph, or otherwise, have developed through their own efforts and choices. The evaluation unit's crystalline structure rippled, refracting light in patterns that suggested reconsideration. Choice as evolutionary metric. Interesting perspective. Most species accept predetermined development parameters. Not here, Julie stated firmly. On Earth, we've learned that true evolution comes from cooperation, adaptation, and mutual respect, not from passing tests designed by absent overseers. Through their bond, Julie felt ship's enthusiastic agreement. The symbiote's own journey from simplistic pet to sophisticated partner represented precisely the kind of unpredicted development she described. Their partnership had evolved not according to some predetermined design but through genuine connection and shared growth. The entity studied them silently for several moments, its crystalline structure shifting through configurations that suggested deep computational processes. Finally, it responded. Your symbiotic relationship demonstrates principles worthy of further study. Mutual adaptation between distinct species, producing capabilities exceeding the sum of component parts. Before Julie could respond, the central console activated again, displaying new astronomical data. The alignment of the 7 systems had progressed significantly, now approaching 78% completion according to measurements displayed on the screen. The primary convergence accelerates, the entity noted. Full evaluation proceeds regardless of individual assessment units' findings. Its tone shifted, carrying what might have been genuine regret beneath the clinical detachment. My function is observational, not determinative. The original makers will proceed with established evaluation parameters. Julie exchanged a glance with ship through their neural link, both recognizing the implications. This entity, advanced as it was, represented merely a preliminary assessment tool, not the primary evaluation force. The real threat remained the approaching convergence and whatever harvesters would follow. Then observe this, Julie challenged. Ship and I are going to help stop this convergence. Not because we were designed to work together, but because we choose to protect this world and others from arbitrary judgment. The entity's crystalline structure pulsed with what might have been curiosity. Rejection of design parameters represents either evolutionary failure or unprecedented advancement. The distinction is not mine to determine. With unexpected suddenness, the evaluation unit began to reconfigure, its crystalline structure compressing into an increasingly dense formation. Preliminary assessment complete. Data transmission follows. This interface will now deactivate until primary evaluation phase. Before Julie could respond, the entity collapsed into a perfect crystalline sphere approximately 10 centimeters in diameter, which then phased partially out of conventional reality, still visible but existing primarily in a state beyond physical interaction. Ship analysis. Julie requested, approaching the dormant evaluation unit cautiously. Through their neural link, Ship conveyed its assessment. Entity in dormant state. Primary consciousness withdrawn from physical interface. Minimal energy signature detected. Assessment. Hibernation mode pending further instructions. So it's basically gone to sleep until its bosses arrive, Julie translated, allowing Ship to retract from full armor configuration to a more comfortable partial coverage. That gives us time to get to headquarters and coordinate with the others. She secured the crystalline sphere in a specialized containment unit from the emergency locker, not to restrain the entity, which had demonstrated its ability to ignore such measures, but to transport it safely for further study. Whatever information could be gleaned from its structure might prove valuable in understanding the approaching threat. As Julie prepared to leave the outpost, Ship interfaced with the central console, downloading the astronomical data displayed there. Through their neural link, he symbiote conveyed disturbing calculations. Based on current progression, the 7-system alignment would reach completion in approximately 3 days. 3 days until full convergence, Julie murmured, securing the containment unit to her belt as Ship reconfigured into travel mode, a streamlined exoskeleton that enhanced her speed and agility without the bulk of full combat armor. Let's make them count. The journey to Plumber headquarters would normally have taken hours through conventional transportation, but Julie and Ship had developed efficient alternatives during their years working together. The symbiote extended from its exoskeleton configuration, transforming into a sleek motorcycle-like vehicle that incorporated elements of mechamorph technology with Earth vehicle design. A hybrid form they had perfected during missions requiring rapid deployment. As they sped through Bellwood's disrupted streets, Julie observed the continuing effects of the convergence on the city around them. Power fluctuations caused buildings to cycle between darkness and brightness. Traffic systems malfunctioned, creating gridlock at major intersections. Above, the impossible astronomical event continued. Stars rearranging themselves into patterns that matched the 7-system alignment displayed in the outpost's data. Despite the chaos, Julie noted the resilience of Bellwood's citizens. An adaptation born from years of alien incidents and superhero battles. Emergency responders directed traffic at dysfunctional intersections. Neighbors checked on one another, forming impromptu community response networks. A city once terrified by extraterrestrial events now demonstrated remarkable capacity to function during cosmic phenomena. They really should evaluate that, Julie commented Ship as they navigated around a particularly congested area. Cooperation and community resilience during crisis situations. Ship pulsed agreement through their neural link, the symbiote's own app. Appreciation for human adaptability having grown alongside their partnership. What had begun as a simple pet-owner relationship had evolved into something unprecedented, a true symbiotic partnership that enhanced both participants while preserving their individual identities. Plumber headquarters, disguised beneath an ordinary plumbing supply warehouse at Bellwood's industrial outskirts, showed no external signs of the crisis unfolding across the planet. As Julie approached, however, Ship's enhanced sensors detected unprecedented activity beneath the mundane facade. Energy signatures suggesting maximum deployment of personnel and resources. The security systems recognized Julie's approach, vehicle entrance opening to admit them without requiring standard identification procedures, a sign that emergency protocols had been fully activated. Ship transformed back from vehicle configuration to exoskeleton as they descended into the facility's lower levels. The command center buzzed with coordinated urgency. Holographic displays showing global situations while communication officers maintained contact with field agents worldwide. Magister Tennyson stood at the center of this controlled chaos, directing response efforts with the calm efficiency of someone who had faced cosmic-level threats multiple times throughout his career. Julie, Max acknowledged her arrival with a nod that conveyed both welcome and acknowledgement of the serious situation. "I see you brought a guest." He gestured toward the containment unit secured at her belt, which held the dormant evaluation unit. It read some kind of hibernation state after completing its preliminary assessment, Julie explained, handing the containment unit to a waiting technician. "It seems these units are just advanced scouts for whatever comes with the full convergence. That matches reports from other locations," Max confirmed, gesturing toward a central holographic display showing similar crystalline spheres recovered from sites around the world. Rome, Arkham, Tokyo, Cairo, all reported evaluation units that completed assessment cycles before entering dormancy. Julie allowed ship to retract further, the symbiote, maintaining only minimal external presence as a bracelet-like band around her left wrist, their standard configuration for professional settings. Through their neural link, however, the connection remained active, ship processing the wealth of information displayed throughout the command center. "What do we know about these original makers?" Julie asked, professional focus overriding any lingering concerns about the entity's claims regarding her partnership with SHIP. The evaluation unit described them as the architects of evolutionary potential across multiple species. Max gestured toward a secure briefing room adjacent to the command center. "We've assembled everything we've learned so far." Kai Green sent comprehensive data from archaeological sites showing evidence of their previous visits to Earth. Hope Chamberlain provided magical perspectives from Arkham. And Ben. He paused, something like parental concern briefly overriding professional detachment. "Ben has discovered concerning connections between the Omnitrix and these beings." The mention of Ben sent an unexpected ripple of emotion through Julie, not the lingering attachment of a former girlfriend, but genuine concern for someone whose welfare remained important to her despite their complicated history. They had parted amicably years ago, both recognizing that their life paths had diverged too significantly for a romantic relationship to flourish. Since then, their interactions had been infrequent but cordial, professional cooperation replacing teenage romance. "Is he all right?" Julie asked, following Max toward the briefing room. "Physically, yes," Max replied, his tone suggesting more complex concerns. "But he's dealing with significant revelations about the Omnitrix, and potentially his own genetic heritage. These original makers apparently designed the foundation for the Omnitrix technology and may have guided the Tennyson bloodline toward compatibility with it." Julie processed this information alongside the evaluation unit's similar claims about her partnership with SHIP. "The entity I encountered said something similar, that the potential for human mechamorph symbiosis was seated in both species' genetics. That SHIP and I were expressing designed potential rather than creating something truly new." Max nodded grimly. "That appears to be their fundamental approach, seeding evolutionary potential across multiple species, then returning periodically to evaluate development. Species that meet their criteria apparently ascend to join them in some capacity. Those deemed unworthy become genetic material for future seeding cycles," Julie finished, recalling the entity's clinical explanation. "Harvested rather than destroyed, but effectively extinct nonetheless." They entered the briefing room to find it already occupied by a diverse group of specialists gathered around a central holographic display. Julie recognized most immediately Cooper Daniels manipulating complex technological schematics with thoughtless precision, Blukik and Dryba arguing over calculations with their usual competitive cooperation, Professor Paradox observing from a corner with his customary enigmatic smile. The time-traveling professor noticed Julie first, his expression brightening with what seemed like genuine pleasure. "Ah, Ms. Yamamoto, right on schedule, as always. Your punctual ity across timelines remains most impressive." "Professor," Julie acknowledged with a nod, having learned through previous encounters that conventional greetings often missed the mark with someone who experienced time non-linearly. "I assume this crisis registers on your radar." "Indeed. The convergence represents a particularly interesting temporal nexus point," one with significant implications for multiple potential futures. Paradox consulted his pocket watch with theatrical flourish. And one which, I might add, features your partnership with SHIP quite prominently in several favorable outcomes. Before Julie could process the implications of this statement, the briefing room door opened again to admit a figure she recognized immediately despite significant changes since their last meeting, Ben Tennyson. His expression carrying the weight of recent revelations beneath the determined focus she remembered well. Ben paused momentarily upon seeing Julie, surprise giving way to genuine warmth. "Julie, I didn't know you were involved in this." His gaze shifted to SHIP's bracelet configuration. "Both of you, I mean." Special consultant for the Xenocommunication Division, Julie explained, professional demeanor masking the complex emotions triggered by his unexpected appearance. "SHIP and I have been tracking unusual transmission patterns for the past 3 years. The signal T had preceded this convergence matched profiles we've been monitoring." Ben nodded, his own manner similarly professional despite their history. "That tracks with what we've found. These, original make, ours seem to communicate across multiple technological and magical frequencies simultaneously." He gestured toward the Omnitrix, which pulsed with energy unlike anything Julie had seen from the device during their relationship. "The watch has been picking up their signals too, apparently by design." The simple statement carried weighty implications that Julie recognized immediately. If Ben's Gen-C heritage and the Omnitrix itself represented designed components in the original maker's grand evolutionary experiment, his entire hero career took on complicated new dimensions. Before either could address these deeper implications, Max called the briefing to order. "We have approximately 68 hours until complete convergence based on current astronomical progression," he began, activating the central holographic display to show the 7-system alignment in real time. "Our intelligence indicates the original makers will deploy harvesting mechanisms to all 7 worlds once alignment completes." The display shifted to show mechanical constructs of impossible complexity, similar to those Julie had glimpsed through SHIP's projection but with greater detail. These harvesters comb in technological and biological elements in ways that defied conventional engineering principles, their design incorporating aspects from multiple species represented in the Omnitrix. "These mechanisms will evaluate evolutionary development against predetermined criteria," Max continued, separating life forms into those selected for ascension and those designated for harvesting as genetic material. "Can we destroy them?" Cooper asked, the young genius already analyzing the harvester's structural composition through the holographic display. "Unlikely," Professor Paradox interjected. "He harvesters exist partially outside conventional reality, similar to the evaluation units but vastly more sophisticated. Conventional weapons would be like trying to destroy a computer program with a hammer." "What about unconventional weapons?" Ben suggested, the Omnitrix pulsing at his wrist. "If these original makers designed the foundation for the Omnitrix, maybe it can affect their technology too." "A logical hypothesis," Paradox acknowledged, but not without significant risk. "The Omnitrix responds to the convergence because it was designed to do so. Using it against its original purpose might have unpredictable consequences." Julie felt SHIP pulse against her wrist, the symbiote conveying an insight through their neural link. "SHIP has an idea," she announced, drawing the room's attention. "The evaluation units themselves represent interfaces between our reality and the original maker's perception. If we could repurpose that connection, we could potentially communicate directly with the original makers." Cooper finished, immediately grasping the concept. "Use their own observation systems as a two-way channel." "Precisely what I was about to suggest," Blukik claimed. "I was going to suggest it first." Dryba countered. "Gentlemen, please," Max interrupted the familiar bickering. "Julie, can SHIP interface with the dormant evaluation unit we recovered?" Julie consulted with SHIP through their neural link, the symbiote conveying both capability and concern. "Yes, but there's significant risk. The evaluation unit activated ancient protocols within SHIP's programming during our previous encounter. A direct interface might trigger similar responses or worse, which could compromise your neural link," Ben realized, understanding immediately despite years of separation from their partnership. His expression showed genuine concern rather than mere tactical consideration. "That's too dangerous." "It's a calculated risk," Julie countered, the professional operative having long since replaced the teenager who had once needed protection. Ship and I have developed safeguards for exactly these kinds of situations. Our neural firewall protocols have stopped similar intrusion attempts before. Max studied her with the measured assessment of a commander weighing tactical necessity against personnel safety. Your call, Julie. You and Ship understand the risks better than anyone. Julie exchanged a silent communication with the symbiote through their neural link, Ship's response conveying determined agreement despite acknowledged dangers. Their partnership had faced similar challenges before, perhaps not of this magnitude, but with the same fundamental question of balancing mission requirements against personal safety. We'll do it, Julie decided. But we'll need specific support. Cooper to monitor the technical interface, Professor Paradox to observe temporal implications, and... She hesitated briefly before continuing, Ben on standby WITH appropriate transformations in case something goes wrong. Ben nodded without hesitation, professional cooperation overriding any awkwardness from their personal history. I've got your back, both of you. Max activated the command center's communication system. Bring the evaluation unit to Technical Lab 3. Full containment protocols, maximum security clearance only. He turned to the assembled specialists. We have less than 3 days until full convergence. Let's make every hour count. As the briefing dispersed toward focused action, Julie found herself momentarily alone with B.N. The first such occurrence in nearly 2 years. Ship maintained a tactful silence through their neural link, the symbiote's emotional awareness having developed enough to recognize the significance of this reunion. So, Ben began, awkwardness briefly breaking through his professional demeanor, special consultant for xenocommunications. That's impressive. Ship deserves most of the credit, Julie replied, allowing the symbiote to pulse with modest disagreement against her wrist. We've been working with Dr. Friedkin to develop new protocols for interspecies communication. Ben nodded, genuine interest replacing perfunctory conversation. I always knew you two would do something amazing together. Ship was always smarter than most people gave him credit for. The symbiote rippled wit, pleased acknowledgement at this recognition, a far cry from the simple pet that had once responded only to its name and basic commands. Through their neural link, Julie felt Ship's genuine appreciation for Ben's understanding. And you? Julie asked, professional courtesy giving way to genuine curiosity. Before all this convergence business started. How have you been? Something complicated, Pa said across Ben's expression. Not quite regret, not exactly nostalgia, but recognition of paths that had diverged years ago. The usual, saving the universe, dealing with Omnitrix glitches, trying to convey something resembling a normal life between cosmic crises. He smiled wryly. You know, the standard Tennyson package. The familiar self-deprecating humor triggered unexpected warmth, reminder of T. He good beneath the complications that had eventually separated them. Before Julie could respond, Max called from the corridor, reminding them of the pressing situation awaiting their attention. We should. Ben gestured toward the exit. Yeah, Julie agreed, professional focus returning. Time to save the world. Again. Some things never change, Ben observed with a half-smile that acknowledged both their shared past and different present circumstances. As they walked toward Technical Lab 3, Julie reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From ordinary teenager, thrust into extraordinary circumstances through a relationship with Ben Tennyson, to international tennis star balancing professional sports with occasional alien encounters, to specialized plumber consultant with a symbiotic partnership unlike any previously documented. Her path had been unexpected but ultimately her own, choices made and directions taken based on personal agency rather than predetermined design. The evaluation unit's claims about designed potential between humans and mechamorphs might contain elements of truth, but Julie rejected the implication that her relationship with Ship was merely the expression of programmed possibility. Their partnership had evolved through mutual choice, respect, and shared experience, not according to some cosmic blueprint established millennia ago. Technical Lab 3 had been reconfigured for their unique requirements when they arrived. The dormant evaluation unit rested within a specialized containment field at the center of the laboratory. Its crystalline structure pulsing with subtle energy despite its hibernation state. Around it, Monitoring equipment displayed constant readings of its multidimensional signatures, while Safeguard S stood ready to contain any unexpected manifestations. Cooper had established a sophisticated interface system designed to allow controlled communication with the entity while minimizing risks of unwanted activation or influence. Professor Paradox observed from a position near the temporal monitoring station, his expression uncharacteristically serious as he studied readings invisible to conventional perception. "Everything's ready," Cooper confirmed as Julie approached the primary interface station. "We've established buffers based on the protocols you and Ship developed during the Bangkok incident. Any attempt at cognitive intrusion will trigger immediate countermeasures." Julie nodded appreciation for the thorough preparation. "Ship will establish initial contact while maintaining our neural link at minimum strength. We'll gradually increase connection only if preliminary interface proves stable." Ben positioned himself near the emergency response station, the Omnitrix pulsing with readiness at his wrist. "Just say the word if you need an intervention. I've got a few transformations in mind that might help if things go sideways." With final preparations complete, Julie took her position at the interface station. Ship flowed from its bracelet configuration, extending along her arm to form the specialized communication array they had developed for particularly challenging xenocommunication scenarios. The symbiote maintained physical connection to Julie while extending filaments toward the contained evaluation unit, a bridge between worlds established through their unique partnership. Beginning interface in 3, 2, 1. Julie initiated the sequence, her voice steady despite the known risks. Ship's consciousness extended through the carefully established connection, touching the dormant evaluation unit with precisely calibrated energy. Through their attenuated neural link, Julie monitored the interaction without directly participating, a precaution against potential cognitive intrusion. The crystalline sphere responded immediately, its hibernation state transitioning to active monitoring as it recognized the galvanic mechamorph's approach. Energy P. A turns shifted within its multifaceted structure, forming communication protocols that Ship carefully interpreted through the established interface. "Contact established," Julie reported, reading Ship's assessment through their link. The entity recognizes Ship's mechamorph signature and is establishing communication parameters based on shared evolutionary foundations. Cooper monitored the technical aspects of the connection, making minute adjustments to maintain stability. Energy transfer remains within acceptable parameters. No sign of intrusion attempts yet. Through Ship, Julie began receiving impressions from the evaluation unit, not language in conventional terms but conceptual frameworks translated through their neural link. The entity expressed what might be described as curiosity regarding their approach, particularly the methodology of using a mechamorph as intermediary. "It's questioning our methodology," Julie translated for the others. Specifically, why we're using a mechamorph as communication interface rather than direct technological connection. "Because we're not idiots," Ben muttered from his position, earning a smile from Julie despite the tense situation. The evaluation unit's response came in complex patterns that Ship interpreted through their link: adaptation, innovation, unexpected approach. Query. Purpose of communication attempt. Were Rex Ting direct communication with the original makers regarding the approaching convergence and evaluation process, Julie stated clearly, allowing Ship to translate the concept through their established connection. The entity's crystalline structure pulsed with increased activity, energy patterns suggesting intense computational processes. Through Ship, Julie sensed something like surprise, perhaps. The first genuine emotional response the evaluation unit had demonstrated. Direct communication, unprecedented request, protocol violation, came the translated response. Evaluation subjects not designed for direct interface with originators. Yet here we are, interfacing with you, Julie countered. Using adaptations and innovations not predicted by your design parameters. Doesn't that demonstrate exactly the kind of evolutionary advancement worth evaluating directly? The logic of this argument created visible disruption in the evaluation unit's energy patterns, evidence that Julie's reasoning G had introduced a paradox into its operational parameters. If the original makers valued evolutionary advancement, then beings who had developed beyond predicted parameters should merit direct communication rather than clinical assessment through intermediaries. After several moments of apparent internal processing, the evaluation unit responded. Request unprecedented consideration required. Pro. Assessing, calculating, evaluating implications. It's considering the request, Julie translated for the others. This apparently represents a significant departure from standard evaluation protocols. Professor Paradox approached from his observation position, expression thoughtful. In all documented convergence cycles across multiple timelines, evaluation subjects have never requested direct communication with the original makers. Always fascinating to witness true divergence points in temporal continuity. Before anyone could respond to this cryptic observation, the evaluation unit's energy signature changed dramatically. Its crystalline structure reconfigured, facets aligning in new patterns as it established a deeper connection to whatever extradimensional consciousness it represented. Something's happening, Cooper warned, monitoring equipment registering the change. The entity is drawing significantly more power from its extradimensional source. Ship maintained the communication interface but strengthened protective barriers around their neural link, the symbiote's protective instincts activating in response to the potential threat. Through their connection, Julie sends not danger but transformation, the evaluation unit reconfiguring itself from simple observer to active communication conduit. The crystalline sphere expanded, its structure becoming more complex as it established what Ship recognized as a multidimensional transmission array. Light pulsed from within its core, projecting into the laboratory space with increasing intensity. Everyone, protective measures, Max ordered, emergency shields activating around the observation stations. Ben moved to Julie's side, hand hovering over the Omnitrix. Should I shut this down? Wait, Julie countermanded, reading Ship's assessment through their link. It's not attacking, it's establishing a communication channel. This is what we wanted. The light coalesced into a projection unlike any holographic display they had encountered before, a representation that seemed to exist simultaneously in multiple phases of reality. Within this projection appeared entities of impossible configuration, therefore, shifting between crystalline structures, energy patterns, and organic components in continuous fluid transformation. The original makers, Julie whispered, recognizing these beings from the glimpse S's ship had shared from its activated ancestral programming. The projection stabilized, focusing on a single representative entity whose form settled into something approximating comprehensible structure. Still alien beyond conventional understanding, but configured specifically for interaction with three-dimensional beings. Communication unexpected interesting, came the transmission, not thrug. Conventional sound but directly into the minds of all present. Evaluation subjects initiating contact unprecedented protocol. Julie maintained her position at the interface station, allowing Ship T.O. serve as primary translator while she provided human contextual interpretation. We are representatives of Earth, one of the 7 systems approaching convergence. We request discussion regarding THE evaluation and harvesting process you have initiated. The entity's form shifted in what might have been consideration. Discussion unusual request purpose unclear. Evaluation proceeds according to established parameters. Design fulfills purpose. The parameters were established without our input, Julie countered, professional diplomacy grounding her response despite the cosmic scale of their conversation. The species being evaluated have evolved beyond their original design specifications. Our potential exceeds your projected parameters. Ben stepped forward, the Omnitrix pulsing in unstoppable resonance with the projected entity. You created the foundation for this technology, he stated, raising his wrist to display the device. And apparently designed my family's genetics to be compatible with it. But we've used it in ways you never anticipated, to protect rather than just to evaluate. The entity's attention shifted, focusing on Ben with intensity that caused the Omnitrix to pulse with increased energy. Tennyson, Benjamin, primary interface subject. Genetic compatibility optimal, function as designed, purpose fulfilled. That's where you're wrong, Ben replied with the confidence of someone who had faced cosmic entities before. I wasn't designed to be your evaluation tool. Whatever genetic compatibility you engineered into my family line, you didn't program my choices. I decide how to use the Omnitrix, not you, not Azimuth, not anyone but me. The entity's form rippled with what might have been surprise, or perhaps amusement at such defiance. Choice illusion within parameters. Convergence proceeds, evaluation continues, harvest approaches. Julie felt Ship's growing concern through their neural link as the symbiote interpreted deeper layers of the entity's communication. The original makers weren't merely dismissing their objections, they were categorizing this entire interaction as predicted behavioral response within evaluation parameters. You believe our resistance is part of your test. Julie realized aloud that our attempt to communicate was anticipated within your evaluation design. All responses anticipated, all adaptations calculated, all evolution directed. The entity confirmed with something approaching satisfaction. 7 systems, 7 experiments, 7 harvests when alignment completes. The clinical detachment with which it discussed harvesting entire worlds chilled Julie despite Ship's temperature regulation. Through their neural link, she felt the symbiote's equal dismay at the casual discussion of what amounted to evolutionary culling presented as cosmic necessity. What if we could show you something truly unanticipated? Professor Paradox interjected, stepping forward despite Max's cautionary gesture. Something beyond your predictive capacity. The entity's attention shifted to the time traveler, its form reconfiguring as it apparently recognized something unusual in Paradox's presence. Temporal anomaly, extra-dimensional constant, unpredicted variable. Indeed, Paradox acknowledged with his customary enigmatic smile. You see, your convergence cycles occur with perfect regularity, approximately every 20,000 years across all 7 systems. But have you considered that your very predictability creates opportunity for adaptation beyond your parameters? The professor's cryptic statement triggered Vizib. La disruption in the entity's manifestation, the first genuine evidence that the original makers might be confronting something outside their anticipated responses. Before the entity could respond, the laboratory's alert system activated. Warning klaxons signaling a security breach in progress. Max moved to the monitoring station, expression darkening as he assessed the situation. Forever Knights, he reported grimly. They've penetrated headquarters defenses using technology we've never seen before. They're heading directly for this location. The entity's form shifted again, this time with what Julie interpreted as expectation rather than surprise. Convergence accelerates, guided evolution manifests, harvest approaches. You're working with them, Ben realized, anger flashing across his features. The Forever Knights are helping you implement the convergence. Evaluation requires indigenous facilitation, selection pressure application, worthiness demonstration, the entity confirmed. Without apparent concern for revealing this alliance. Knights serve purpose, fulfill function, apply selection criteria. The laboratory doors sealed automatically as security protocols activated, but He reinforced barriers began to glow with unusual energy, evidence of sophisticated technology being applied to breach their defenses. Through Ship, Julie sensed the approaching Knights were using meant derived from the same fundamental principles as the evaluation unit itself. We need to move this conversation somewhere secure, Max decided, activating emergency evacuation protocols. Cooper, download all data from this communication session. Professor, any temporal insights would be appreciated. Always so focused on the immediate tactical situation, Paradox observed with seemingly inappropriate calm given the circumstances. Perhaps consider that this confrontation occurs precisely where and when it must, a nexus point with particular significance across multiple timelines. Beef. Or anyone could decipher this cryptic observation. The laboratory doors breached with a flash of energy that bypassed security systems completely. Forever Knights entered in formation, their traditio. Null medieval-inspired armor now enhanced with technology that pulsed with the same energy signature as the original maker's projection. The convergence proceeds as designed, announced their leader. Helmet retracting to reveal a woman in her 40s with the focused intensity of religious conviction. The Tennyson specimen has been located alongside the symbiotic anomaly. 2 evaluation subjects, of particular interest secured simultaneously. Ben moved protectively toward Julie, the Omnitrix activating with that now familiar smooth transition rather than the typical flash. Really not in mood for cryptic destiny talk from medieval cosplayers, he stated, transformation energy building around his form. Especially ones who think selling out humanity gets them cosmic brownie points. Not selling out, ascending. The knight corrected with the serene certainty of a true believer. The worthy rise, others serve their purpose through genetic contribution. The natural order established at creation. Julie allowed Ship to flow from the communication array into combat configuration, the symbiote forming protective armor around her body with practiced efficiency. Their neural link strengthened as they prepared for coordinated defense, years of partnership having perfected their combat synchronization. The original maker's projection observed this confrontation with what appeared to be scientific interest. Its form shifting to better perceive the interaction between knights, humans, and transformed beings. Conflict, selection, pressure, adaptation, stimulus. Observation continues. They're watching this like it's an experiment, Julie realized through their neural link, ship conveying equal disgust at the clinical detachment. Testing our responses to threat is part of their evaluation. Then let's show them something worth evaluating, Ben replied, transformation completing to reveal a form Julie had never witnessed during their relationship, humanoid but composed of living energy. Quantum possibilities rippling across its surface with each movement. Atomic X, he announced, voice carrying harmonics that resonated with the original maker's own communication patterns. Let's see how your design parameters handle this. The knights deployed formation with practiced efficiency, weapons humming with energy derived from original maker technology. Their Tactica L approach suggested extensive preparation specifically for confronting transformed opponents, evidence of long-term planning rather than opportunistic attack. Non-lethal containment only, their leader ordered. Both specimens are required for optimal evaluation data. Julie and Ship responded with the coordinated precision developed through years of partnership. The symbiote formed specialized countermeasures against the knight's weapons, adapting its technological composition based on observed energy signatures. Simultaneously, Julie implemented combat maneuvers that utilized Ship's in-hand cements while incorporating her own athletic training and tactical experience. Ben engaged from his position, Atomic X's abilities manifesting with unprecedented control. Rather than the raw energy projection Julie remembered from his younger transformations, his attacks demonstrated surgical precision, neutralizing knight technology without endangering the personnel themselves. Through their neural link, Ship conveyed a tactical observation. Knight's technology incorporating original maker principles but implementation flawed, incomplete. Exploitation opportunity detected. Ben, Julie called, relaying the insight while maintaining defensive position. Their tech is knockoff original maker design. All processing nodes connect to central control unit on the leader's armor. Ben acknowledged with a nod. Quantum energy coalescing around his transformed state as he identified the vulnerability Ship had detected. With precise application of power, he generated an electromagnetic pulse specifically calibrated to the knight's technology, disrupting their systems without affecting plumber equipment or Ship's functions. The knight's formation faltered as their enhanced armor lost power, weapons cycling through emergency shutdown procedures. Their leader maintained partial functionality, evidence of superior technology in her command unit, but the coordinated assault had effectively been neutralized. Throughout this confrontation, the original maker's projection observed with unchanging scientific detachment, cataloging responses, analyzing tactical decisions, evaluating adaptatio. NS with the clinical precision of researchers documenting experimental results. Coordination, unanticipated efficiency, interesting adaptation, the entity communicated, its form shifting to better observe the neutralized knights. Indigenous facilitators underperforming, selection pressure insufficient, evaluation continues. The casual dismissal of the knight's failure triggered visible dismay in the IR leader's expression, the first crack in her zealous certainty. The convergence proceeds according to design, she insisted, addressing the projection directly. These specimens demonstrate precisely the adaptive potential you predicted. Quote, adaptation within parameters, resistance expected, harvest proceeds, the entity confirmed without apparent concern for the knight's current predicament. Your connection fulfilled, purpose served, usefulness evaluated. The implication hung in the air with chilling clarity. The knights themselves were being evaluated alongside the species they believed they were helping to judge. Their value to the original makers extended only as far as their usefulness as indigenous facilitators in the evaluation process. You're just tools to them, Julie addressed the knight's leader. Professional detachment giving way to genuine attempt at connection. Not partners in ascension, just another variable in their experiment. Doubt flickered across the knight commander's features, momentary but unmistakable. The worthy ascend, she repeated, but with less conviction than before. Those who serve the natural order rise above evolutionary limitations. All serve POE. RPOSE, all fulfill design, all return to source, the entity communicated, its dispassionate assessment confirming Julie's point more effectively than any argument could have. Knight's function is indigen. Aus selection mechanism, temporary utility, evaluation includes all variables. Ben reverted to human form with that same unsettling smoothness, the Omnitrix pulsing at his wrist in perfect synchronization with the entity's projection. You don't even see them as people, do you? He addressed the original maker directly. Just components in your grand experiment, like all of us. The entity's form S, hifted in what might have been consideration, or perhaps adjustment to better observe this unexpected line of questioning. Components, contributors, expressions of designed potential. All serve greater evolution, all return to source when purpose fulfilled. That's the fundamental problem with your evaluation, Julie interjected, ship retracting partially from combat configuration as the immediate threat subsided. You're judging species based on criteria established millennia ago, without accounting for how they've evolved beyond your initial parameters. You created potential, Ben added, buoy. LDING on Julie's point with the seamless coordination that had once characterized their relationship. But you didn't create what we've become. The choices we've made, the connections we've formed, civilizations we've built, those belong to us, not to some absent creators who seeded genetic possibilities eons ago. The entity's form rippled with what might have been the first genuine response. Beyond scientific observation, something approaching reconsideration. Choice as evolutionary metric, unexpected evaluation parameter, requires further assessment. Professor Paradox stepped forward once again, his customary enigmatic smile replaced with unusual seriousness. Perhaps what truly merits evaluation is not how closely these species adhere to your design parameters, but how far they've exceeded them. Not conformity to predetermined patterns but innovation beyond projected possibilities. The entity's attention focused on Paradox with increased intensity, its form reconfiguring to bet. Perceive the temporal anomaly he represented. Time walker, pattern disruptor, unprecedented variable. Your presence not calculated in convergence parameters. Indeed, Paradox acknowledged with slight bow. You see, while you observe evolution across millennial timescales, returning with perfect regularity to evaluate development, I perceive outcomes across multiple potential timelines simultaneously. And I can state with absolute certainty that your current evaluation methodology produces suboptimal results. This statement triggered visible disruption in the entity's manifestation, GY patterns destabilizing briefly before reconfiguring with increased complexity. Through their neural link, Ship conveyed to Julie that the original maker was experiencing something analogous to cone ITIVE dissonance, a fundamental challenge to established operational parameters. Evaluation methodology optimal, designed for maximum evolutionary efficiency, implemented across 7 systems for multiple cycles, the entity countered. Though Julie sensed defensive justification beneath the confident assertion. Process refinement continuous, parameters adjusted based on results. Yet you apply the me fundamental criteria cycle after cycle, Paradox observed mildly. Measuring new developments against predetermined standards rather than evaluating the innovation itself. Quite literally judging the present with metrics from the past. The laboratory had fallen silent apart from this exchange, even the captured knights watching with evident fascination as a time traveler debated evolutionary philosophy with an entity that had helped shape life across multiple star systems. Max had positioned plumber agents to secure the knights while maintaining observation of this unprecedented dialogue. Alternative methodology proposal, the entity finally requested, its form stabilizing into a configuration that suggested genuine engagement rather than mere observation. Evaluation requires standard. Measurement demands metrics, assessment necessitates parameters. Paradox glanced toward Ben and Julie with what might have been encouragement, prompting them to contribute to this critical negotiation. Julie felt Ship's support through their neural link as she formulated her response. Evaluate based on potential rather than conformity, she suggested, drawing on her experiences as both athlete and diplomat. Judge species not on how well they've followed predetermined evolutionary paths, but on how they've innovated beyond them. Measure cooperation and symbiosis rather than mere individual advancement. Look at what we've created together, Ben added, gesturing toward the assembled group that included humans, transformed beings, and technological symbiotes. Different species working toward common goals, forming connections that none of your design parameters could have predicted. The entity's form shifted through multiple configurations as it processed these suggestions, evident. Of genuine reconsideration rather than dismissal. Cooperation as evolutionary metric, symbiosis as advancement indicator, innovation beyond parameters as success measure. Unprecedented evaluation approach. OCH requires recalculation, convergence parameters adjustment. Hope sparked in Julie's chest at this apparent openness to alternative approaches. Through their neural link, Ship conveyed cautious optimism, sensing genuine shift in the entity's perspective rather than mere tactical adjustment. Before further negotiation could proceed, however, the laboratory's monitoring systems activated with urgent warning. Cooper moved to the primary display, expression darkening as he assessed incoming data. The alignment is accelerating, he reported grimly. Convergence timeline has compressed from 68 hours to less than 24. Something's forcing the process ahead of natural progression. The entity's form destabilized briefly before reconfiguring with increased urgency. Parameter O. Veride detected, convergence acceleration unauthorized, protocol violation in progress. What does that mean? Ben demanded, the Omnitrix pulsing with increased intensity at his wrist. Who could override your convergence parameters? Partial consciousness transfer, incomplete understanding, fragmented implementation. The entity communicated with what Julie interpreted as genuine alarm. Indigenous. Facilitators accessing restricted protocols, attempting independent harvest initiation, convergence integrity compromised. Julie exchanged glances with Ben, both immediately understanding the implications. The Forever Knights, she translated for the others. They're not just helping implement the convergence, they're trying to control it. Force the process to advance on their timeline rather than waiting for natural alignment. The Knight Commander's expression confirmed this assessment, not surprise at the revelation but dismay at its discovery. The ascension cannot be delayed, she stated. Religious conviction replacing tactical calculation. The worthy must rise, the unworthy must serve their purpose. If the original makers hesitate, those who understand the natural order must facilitate its implementation. Unauthorized protocol implementation, dangerous acceleration, system instability imminent, the entity warned, its form beginning to lose coherence as connection to its primary consciousness weakened. Harvest mechanisms deploying prematurely, evaluation parameters incomplete, catastrophic outcome probable. The laboratory's monitoring systems confirmed this warning, displaying approaching energy signatures consistent with the harvester mechanisms depicted in earlier projections. Unlike the controlled deployment that would have followed natural convergence, these signatures showed erratic patterns suggesting incomplete programming and unstable manifestation. They're forcing the harvesters to deploy before the original makers completed their reconsideration, Cooper explained. Reading technical data with practiced efficiency. Using partial access to their systems to initiate collection without waiting for final evaluation parameters. Which means they're operating on the original criteria. Julie realized, the horrifying implications settling like cold stone in her stomach. Harvesting based on predetermined standards rather than the revised approach we were just negotiating. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.